Another sellout crowd, 56,000 fans here at County Stadium, where they always turn out to a capacity house here whenever the Green Bay Packers are in town. This is really the second home of the Packers. They play half of their home games here in Milwaukee, the other half, of course, in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. 32 degrees is the temperature right now. Relative humidity 61%. The winds southwest at 20 miles an hour. Forecast is for light rain later on in the afternoon. The Packers have won the toss and have elected to receive. The Minnesota Vikings will kick off. And defend the goals are right. Jan Stenerud, the former Green Bay Packer, is all set to kick off now for the Minnesota Vikings. Philip Epps, along with Del Rogers, back to receive for the Packers.
And Jim, both these clubs in similar situations, both with new coaches, both 3-7, both have had tough schedules, both have had a lot of heartbreaking losses throughout the season. So they're trying to prove today that they actually can be competitive and they can get something going for the end of the year.
Philip Epps, as we mentioned, number 85, Del Rogers, number 35, back to receive for the Packers. And both teams have identical records of 3-7 as Stenerud approaches the ball. And our contest is underway. This is Philip Epps at about the 12-yard line. Philip Epps gets up to about the 30, over the 30-yard line before he's tackled there by Rufus Best. So that's where the Packers will take over. 1st and 10 at their own 30-yard line. The starting lineup: Lynn Dickey at quarterback, Jesse Clark, Gary Ellis, James Lofton, and John Jefferson, the fine wide receivers for the Packers. Their offensive line, and it's a good one. Kaufman, Swanky, Huffman, McCarron, the veteran, Hallstrom, and Cook. First and 10. Ball at the 30-yard line of the Green Bay Packers as our ball game is just underway. This is the first possession for the Packers. That's John Jefferson in motion. And Dickey's back to pass already. Out in the flat, complete to Jesse Clark. Jesse Clark gets away from Fred McNeil before he gets tackled there by Tom Hannon. So the defensive alignment now for the Minnesota Vikings: Neil Elshire, Charlie Johnson, and Greg Smith. The linebackers: Matt Blair, Dennis Johnson, Scott Studwell, and Fred McNeil. In the secondary: Joey Brown, Rufus Best, Tommy Hannon, and Carl Lee. Pickup of 7 yards on the play. 2nd and 3 now for the Packers. Jefferson in motion again. Here comes the blitz by Minnesota. And that's Dennis Johnson getting into the backfield and making the tackle. And it looks like, John, we're starting to see now where the Vikings are really going to try and put a lot of pressure on Lynn Dickey immediately.
And they have to. The Packer defense is injured. Their front three has problems. Doug Martin is hurt. Mulaney is hurt. And the word around the league, and Forrest Gregg knows it, is that you must get pressure on Lynn Dickey if you are to beat the Green Bay Packers. That time you saw the blitz. We'll see a lot of that this afternoon. Les
Steckel told us yesterday that the Vikings are going to blitz a lot. He says we're going to make some big plays and we're going to give up some big plays. That time they made a pretty good play. Here's Dickey again. Out in the flat, complete to Jesse Clark. Clark tackled by Rufus Best. Not enough yardage for the first down, so 4th down situation. That means Bucky Scribner will come in and punt for the Green Bay Packers.
Bucky Scribner will do the punting.
And as Scribner gets ready to punt, that means that the Vikings will have Darren Nelson.
Number 20, Darren Nelson.
Bucky Scribner, the left-footed punter for the Packers, and this is the kind of day that punters really don't like to come in because they know that they can't get warm and they're not going to get a good solid kickoff. So let's see what Scribner can do as Darren Nelson's back to receive. And a pretty good effort. Ball hits at the 10. Touches the goal line, and it will be a touchback. As you see the official pointing to where the ball landed in the end zone, it'll come out to the 20-yard line, and that's where the Vikings will take over 1st and 10.
And that, Jim, that was a 61-yard kick. You saw the ball just go into the end zone and come back out. There, the referee pointed to it, and that's why it'll come back out to the 20-yard line. Take a look at it again, the downing of the punt. It's very close to the goal line, and Nelson lets it go. And then watch the ball closely. So it goes into the end zone, and it was just down on the line, and that's the reason the Vikings take over 1st and 10 at the 20-yard line, not at the 1-yard line.
Wade Wilson at quarterback for the Vikings. His running backs, Alfred Anderson and Ted Brown. The toss back is to Ted Brown. Brown gets up to about the 25-yard line before he's tackled by number 41, Tom Flynn.
41.
Here's a look at the starting offensive alignment for the Vikings. Wade Wilson at quarterback, Alfred Anderson, Ted Brown will just carry the ball. Sammy White and Mike Jones are the wide receivers. Their front line, Jordan, Irwin, Rouse, Sams, the former Green Bay Packer, Tausch, and Steve Riley. Pick up of 5 yards, so it'll be 2nd and 5. Ball at the 25-yard line of Minnesota. Wade Wilson. And it's complete, almost complete, I should say, into and out of the hands of Alfred Anderson. Of course, Anderson should have had that. The ball was right in his hands, and Johnny should have had it. Here's the defensive alignment now for the Green Bay Packers. They play the 3-4. Carricker, Jones, and Donnie Humphrey up front. The linebackers, Anderson, Scott, George Cumbie, and Mike Douglas. In the secondary, Mark Lee, Tim Lewis are the corners. Mark Murphy and Tom Flynn, the safeties. The Vikings now have 3 wide receivers as Leo Lewis, number 87, checks into the ball game. Trying to confuse the Packers a little bit with multiple formations. And here's Wilson back to pass. Intended for Leo Lewis, but it was behind him. The closest Packer there was number 53, Mike Douglas.
And it's interesting that play, the Vikings have had incredible success on their opening drives early this year. They used something called the Dirty Dozen, a preset sequence of plays, and they've been successful. They've just about gotten a first down on every series in their first 10 games, so that's a break from sequence this year.
Greg Coleman, punt for Minnesota. Tom Flynn, right there, number 41 to receive for the Packers. And Coleman gets off a line drive punt, and here is Flynn at the 36. Tom Flynn getting over the 45, up to about the 48-yard line before he's tackled there by number 50, Dennis Folks. Talking about the Dirty Dozen, and this is what it means.
A pre-prescribed set of plays that Steckel has. Well, they've been very successful, as you can see. This time they were not. They did not get a first down. They gave the ball back to the Packers, and now they have good field position.
Len Dickey at quarterback for the Packers. 1st and 10, ball at the Green Bay 47-yard line. Gary Ellis, a lone setback, as Dickey goes back to pass. Feels pressure, dumps it off to Jesse Clark. Jesse Clark, tackled by Fred McNeil and Walker Lee Ashley.
Ashley made the tackle.
And Dickey's coming out throwing the ball. Of course, the Packers are noted for their potent offense through the air, most of it to the wide receivers. Here he goes to his back. Clark on the screen. You see the lead block right there by number 65. And he gets some yardage. That was Ron Hallstrom, the big guard, 6'6", 283.
Eddie Lee Ivory checks into the backfield now for the Packers. With Jefferson in motion, the handoff goes to Eddie Lee Ivory. Ivory behind some good blocking. All of a sudden, though, up from the Minnesota Vikings secondary and out of the linebacking core, Walker Lee Ashley comes up and makes a fine defensive play.
And what a difference Eddie Lee Ivory's return has made to this Packer offense. Against Detroit 2 weeks ago, over 100 yards. Last week against New Orleans, he had 78 yards. So Eddie Lee Ivory has taken some of the pressure off Len Dickey as the running game of the Packers starts to come alive.
Last couple of weeks, averaging almost 8 yards a carry, which is really amazing. 3rd and 3, all at the 46-yard line of the Vikings. Going deep, in and out of the hands of James Lofton. Rufus Best defending for Minnesota.
And when you talk about key matchups, it's across those 2 defensive backs. Rufus Best, number 21, here trying to cover James Lofton. If he can do it, then Minnesota will have some success. Here he's one-on-one Lofton, trying to lull him to sleep. He doesn't buy it because you see in the right side of your screen, he had help deep, so he could settle and react on James Lofton.
I can't see the lines, girl!
Bucky Scribner into punt for the Packers. And Darren Nelson back to receive at about his 10-yard line for Minnesota. Scribner again heading for the far sidelines. This time the ball is going to be down at about the 5.5 or 6 yard line of the Minnesota Vikings. Getting downfield was Rich Wingo.
Darren Nelson again indecisive right there. Last time
As Les Steckel is looking down, John, you wonder if he's going to stick with that dirty dozen the first 12 plays of the ball game that he says he normally sticks with.
and he wants those run in consecutive order. 1, 2, 3, right through 12. And it wasn't successful only for the second time this season, the first series of plays. Let's see if he goes back to it right here in the second series.
First and 10, ball at the Vikings 7-yard line. Inside handoff to Ted Brown. Brown getting up to about the 10-yard line. Tackle there made by John Anderson.
Ted Brown.
And you talk about that dirty dozen, that first series of plays. It's also for mental rehearsal. He wants his team to be mentally disciplined. So he says, look, gentlemen, here are the first 12 plays that we're going to run. I think they will work against the Green Bay Packers. They make sense against all the defenses. Now memorize them, learn them, use that mental discipline, and it'll make you a better ball player. And also, we'll be successful.
Pickup of 3 yards. Second and 7. Ball at the 10-yard line now of Minnesota. Toss back to Alfred Anderson. Number 55 comes up to make the tackle, Randy Scott. With 9:20 left to go, let's go to Brent Musburger in New York for this NFL Today update.
Jim, the Eagles strike first on the unbeaten Miami Dolphins. Ron Jaworski pulls out. Mike Quick is covered. The pass is thrown beautifully. 7-0 Eagles with a quick lead. Back to Jim.
Oh, what a great pass there by Ron Jaworski. But we also know who can throw for the opposition.
Oh, they're averaging close to 33 points a game. Their defense has played well, too, so you can bet Marino will be back in that one.
3rd and 3. Ball at the 14 of the Vikings. Handoff goes to Alfred Anderson, trying to get to the outside. But he is not going to do it. John Anderson comes up to make the tackle for the Packers and will force a 4th and punting situation.
John Anderson made the tackle.
And one of the strengths of the Green Bay Packer defense is their linebacker. Take a look at John Anderson. He's on the left of your screen. He fights off the blocker, takes it outside, forces the runner wide, and then he gets help from Mark Lee, number 22. They bring him down, force the kick by the Minnesota Vikings.
Greg Coleman with a sore right knee into punt for Minnesota. Tom Flynn back to receive for the Packers at about his 42-yard line. And Coleman gets off a short punt. The Packers getting away from it. It takes a Green Bay bounce. And the Packers will have the ball in excellent field position at about the 42-yard line of the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, the only man to coach in and play in a Super Bowl.
Remember when it was the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl a few years ago? He knows what it's like to win and what kind of a team he wants to win.
1st and 10. Green Bay at the 42 of Minnesota. Inside draw to Gary Ellis. Ellis getting to the outside. Fred McNeil had a hand on him. He got away from Phil. However, he was tackled there by Tom Hannon.
And, you know, in talking to Forrest Gregg, he says one of the reasons that our offense is now productive is that we have the big offensive line the way we had in Cincinnati. Take a look at the Super Bowl offensive line of the Cincinnati Bengals when Forrest Gregg was the coach. Now let's take a look at what he's done here in Green Bay. He's replaced those guards. See Huffman, and you see Hallstrom, 6'5", 282. Hallstrom, 6'6", 283. He's got that big, powerful offensive line to give Dickey protection and to be able to run the ball.
And they've been doing an excellent job of protecting Lynn Dickey. Pickup of 8 yards then. 2nd and 2. Ball at the 34. Dickey back to pass. Good protection. Down the far sidelines for James Lofton. One official rules it complete. However, the Vikings are trying to dispute the call.
And, Jim, that was double coverage. They had a man covering Lofton short. They had the safety covering deep. Dickey threw it in the area where you're supposed to throw. It wasn't a perfect throw, but it appeared as though Lofton had a chance. See this? Between the cornerback who's up front and the safety who's back, and as he was hit, the ball was knocked away. Take another look at it right here. See the man covering him, bump and run, running with him right there. That's number 21, Rufus Bess. And then the safety coming over hits him right there and coughs it up.
The official ruled it completion first, then changed his mind. Brings the ball back. 3rd and 2. Ball at the 34-yard line of the Vikings. Lynn Dickey back to pass. Coming to John Jefferson. Complete. Good enough for the first down. Joy Browner knocking Jefferson out of bounds.
And, you know, the story in Green Bay has been, why has John Jefferson had such low productivity this year? Only 21 receptions coming into this game. John Jefferson is that possession receiver. great body control, great movement. He can run the out as well as anyone. Dickey can throw it. Here they show you they can do it. First down.
We talked to a former Packer great a little while ago, and Max McGee told us that he expects John Jefferson to have a very big afternoon, and we'll see. Good enough for the first down. 1st and 10. Ball at the Viking 22-yard line. That's Jefferson in motion. Tossback comes to Jesse Clark. Clark is tackled by number 73, Neil Elshire.
You talk about John Jefferson and Lofton and Kaufman, certainly a great tandem of wide receivers. Hard to get the ball evenly to all of them, especially when you have a great athlete like James Lofton. But Jefferson, I mean, his years in San Diego where he had 3 straight 1,000-yard years, he should be part of the offense. He says he's open. Forrest Gregg says, well, that's not the case. Len Dickey says, I'll throw where the defense dictates. So there's been some friction, and John Jefferson is part of it here in Green Bay.
We'll get a bird's eye view this afternoon and see exactly what is the problem. 6:25 left to go in the first period. Dickey back to pass. Everyone picks up the blitz. Throwing deep into the corner. Into and out of the hands of John Jefferson. So Jefferson was open that particular time. Carl Lee was over defending for the Minnesota Vikings.
Of course, Jefferson noted for his great hands, his great movement. There they line the 2 wide receivers up on the same side. Watch Jefferson go, break to the post, and then break outside. Dickey throws the ball. Jefferson stretches out and just can't hold as he's being covered by number 39, Carl Lee. But he was open, just didn't hold. So Lofton appears to be going to Jefferson more today than he has all season long.
3rd and 9, ball at the 21. Dickey back to pass again. Excellent protection. Going for Jefferson again. This time he makes a completion. The ball goes out of bounds at about the 8-yard line. Carl Lee again defending.
One of the raps on John Jefferson is that he hasn't been able to get away from the bump and get away. Take a look at it here. Carl Lee, number 39, is bumping him all over the field. He breaks away the outside. Dickey waits, delivers the ball, and watch along the sideline. See those feet dot the I? And the referee tells you right there a reception. Take a look at it again. Watch him being bumped around inside in the slot. See Lee pushing. Jefferson gets off it, stumbles, but still with that great body control makes the reception.
Philip Epps checks into the ballgame. Here's Dickey back to pass. Going for Epps. And the crowd in the end zone is calling for and hollering and screaming for pass interference. However, it was not as good defense there by Joey Browner.
And Joey Browner, of course, only playing his 2nd game at cornerback for the Minnesota Vikings. They tried him all over the place. He's such a great athlete, the #1 draft choice last year, that they feel he has to play somewhere. Here, he was beaten last week on the post. He reacts well, hits the man just as he's catching the ball, and thus prevents a completion. Joey Browner, number 47.
Told us yesterday he's going to challenge these Packer wide receivers, so we'll get a chance to see. Ed West checks in for the Packers as they have 2 tight ends in now. Pass into the end zone, complete to Paul Kaufman. Touchdown.
Touchdown to Paul Kaufman.
So Len Dickey throws his 17th touchdown pass of the year. Paul Kaufman makes his 8th touchdown reception of the year, and the Green Bay Packers are on the scoreboard.
You talk about being a hot receiver. Paul Kaufman, 2 touchdowns last week against New Orleans, the week before 2 against Detroit. He gets one here early for the Packers.
Al Del Greco in to attempt the extra point conversion now for the Packers. Lucky Scribner will be holding. Good.
If you take a look at Paul Kaufman in motion, motion always causes the defense problems, especially down by the goal line. See Kaufman in motion, turns quickly, Dickey gets him the ball, and then he just turns upfield and barrels into the end zone. Paul Kaufman, one of the reasons the Packer offense had its problems.
Need 8 plays to go 42 yards, take up 1:55 on the clock, capped off by the Len Dickey to Paul Kaufman. 7-yard touchdown pass. Here's Al Del Greco kicking off. Darren Nelson and Alfred Anderson. This is Darren Nelson. Darren Nelson belted at about the 24-yard line before his tackle. Tackle there made by Cliff Lewis. Scores today in the National Football League. San Francisco over Cleveland, 6-0 in the first period. In the first period, it is Cincinnati leading Pittsburgh 3-0. Philadelphia over Miami. Look at that. That's a surprise. 14-0 in the first quarter. Indianapolis over the Jets 3-0 in the first period. And And New Orleans leading Atlanta 7-0 in the first quarter. Houston trailing Kansas City 3-0 in the first period. And with 5:56 left to go here in our first quarter, it's Green Bay leading the Minnesota Vikings 7-0. Then Dickey going to Paul Kaufman for 7 yards. Wade Wilson quarterbacking for the Vikings. Inside reverse. This is Alfred Anderson. Alfred Anderson tackled by Tom Flynn as he gets over the 30-yard line, and the 30-yard line. And Les Steckel was telling us yesterday that he's going to use Alfred Anderson a little bit more today and in some different kinds of ways.
He gives them that power running game inside. He has good speed. He's 6'1", 215 pounds, a rookie out of Baylor. And he's played well early in the season. Then he had a sputtering, but last week against Tampa Bay, he gained 52 yards and was good in the second half.
Pick up of 6 yards. It's 2nd and 4. Ball at the 31-yard line. That's Anderson in motion. Is Wilson back to pass? Throws to, and it is complete. Pass complete there to Steve Jordan.
You know, one of the things that Les Steckel said that he was happy with Wade Wilson last week against Tampa Bay, two things really. His ability to stay cool under pressure and audible. Also, his ability to rifle the ball in there in traffic to his receivers. That time, he did that.
Especially with today's weather conditions where the winds get pretty strong. You want someone with a strong arm. Joe Sensor, number 81, the veteran tight end, checks in for the Vikings now. 1st and 10. There's Wilson back to pass. Coming down the near side lines, and it is incomplete. Pass intended there for number 85, Sammy White.
And Tim Lewis, number 26, played him very, very well. Lewis, the second-year man out of Pitt, is one of the reasons that the Packer defense is much better. He can run. He's got 4 interceptions. He's been outstanding all year long as you take a look from the ground level. You see the blitz coming. Wade Wilson did the right thing. He knew it was one-on-one coverage, except it was just great coverage by number 26, Tim Lewis, excuse me.
And we got a great example then of the maturity of Wade Wilson just throwing the ball out of bounds. 2nd and 10. Ball at the 36. Wilson can't get away from the sack. On the blitz, John Anderson and George Humby.
And the Packer defense is much more aggressive than it's been. If you look at their linebackers, last year they were the worst defense in the NFL, and their linebackers played about 4 yards deep. Now look at them. They're up 2 yards off the line, and they're coming with the blitz. Wade Wilson tries to fake, but John Anderson is right there in his face for the sack.
Forrest Gregg told us yesterday that they were going to try and put a lot of pressure on the young quarterback to see how much he has matured, and there's a great example right there. 3rd and 16, ball at the 30. Wilson back. Here comes the pressure again, but he dumps it off. Complete to Ted Brown. Brown is pushed out of bounds by Tim Lewis, number 26 again.
And Tim Lewis did what a defensive back should be. They were in zone. He bumped the wide receiver. He was reading the back out of the backfield. So when the receiver went by, he didn't chase him inside and give that back all the room in the flat. He came off and then drove him out of bounds and forces a punt, 4th and long.
So it will be 4th down now for the Vikings. Greg Coleman in to punt again. Tom Flynn back to receive for the Packers at about his 26-yard line. Low snap, but Coleman gets it off. Tom Flynn gets away, and the ball is down by number 47, Joey Browner, at about the 29-yard line of the Minnesota Vikings. 4 minutes left to go in the first quarter. Then Dickie Coleman. The Packers have the ball, 1st and 10 at their own 29-yard line. Lynn Dickey at quarterback. Jesse Clark and Gary Ellis in the backfield. Inside handoff goes to Gary Ellis. Ellis breaks into the secondary of the Minnesota Vikings. Picks up enough yardage for the first down before it's tackled by Robin Sinline and Joey Browner. For an NFL Today report update, let's go to Brent Musburger in New York again.
Jim, the heat's on in Miami. The Eagles 2 for 2. Here's their second touchdown against the Dolphins. Jaworski to Woodruff, and it's 14-0. Let's go back to Jim.
Thank you very much, Brent. That is somewhat of a surprise. Instead of Marino throwing the touchdown passes, it's Jaworski.
But, Jim, you know it's so tough to play 16 weeks with the same level of intensity.
3:24 to go here in the first period. Here's Dickey back to pass. Dumps it off to Eddie Lee Ivory. Eddie Lee is tackled there by number 47, Joey Browner. It's back up to about the line of scrimmage.
And you know, Jim, early field position has played an important part in this game. Greg Coleman has punted 3 times for only 34-yard average. His last punt before the Packers got the last drive was only 27 yards, and that's the reason the Pack only had to go 42 for the touchdown. So you mentioned his injured leg. Well, that's been a difference here today. Field position for the Packers. And lack of it for the Vikings.
No gain on the play. 2nd and 10. Here's the pressure. Dickey ducks, throws the ball, almost intercepted by number 45, Tommy Hannon. The pass intended there for Paul Kaufman.
And if the Minnesota Vikings are going to win, they're going to have to get pressure on Dickey. It's a team that has only sacked the quarterback, the Vikings, 16 times, while Mark Gastineau alone has more sacks than the entire Minnesota Viking defense. So you know that pressure isn't one of their strong points.
16 sacks is the fewest in the National Football Conference. And that's one of the things that, one of the many things that Les Steckel is concerned about. Philip Epps checks in for the Packers. That gives him 3 wide receivers. 3rd and 10, ball at the 42-yard line of Green Bay. That's Lofton in motion. Dickey going to Lofton, and it is complete. James Lofton, tackled by Willie Teal. So Lofton coming in motion, making the reception. Picks up about 6.5 to 7 yards on the play, and that will make it 3rd and about 3, or rather 4th and about 3. That brings in the punting formation now for the Green Bay Packers. Bucky Scribner coming in to kick now for Green Bay. Darren Nelson back at his own 10-yard line for Minnesota. The weather so far this afternoon has not affected Scribner as it has Greg Coleman. Scribner gets off another good high punt. Nelson at the 11-yard line, and he's tackled immediately. Hit there by Guy Prater. Coming up next, the Chicago Bears going against the Los Angeles Rams. The second half of our doubleheader this afternoon right here on CBS Sports. And it's going to be a good one. As we know, the Los Angeles Rams are still in a battle for a wild card spot with other teams.
And a wild battle. Of course, one of those bottom 4 teams will win the division. And the Rams, of course, fighting for that wild card spot in their division. Of course, one of those teams will win the division. One will be the wild card.
Don't forget, coming up next, the Bears and the Los Angeles Rams. 1st and 10 for Minnesota. Ball at their own 10-yard line. Wade Wilson at quarterback. Here's a handoff to Alfred Anderson. Hit in the backfield. Mike Douglas and Robert Brown. George Cumbie also coming up.
The Vikings are going to have to get something going. Right now, they don't have any offensive rhythm whatsoever. Take a look at what happened in their last 3 possessions. Punt, punt, punt. That won't do it.
And the best field position that they've started from has been their own 25-yard line. This time they start at their own 10. There's a handoff to Ted Brown. Brown gets up to about the 25-yard line before he's tackled by George Cumbie. George Cumbie, one of the leading tacklers for the Green Bay Packers, and Ted Brown, who we talked to yesterday. What a marvelous sense of humor he has. He's one of the instigators on that ball club. He says he likes to start things and then get away from it and let the big fellas take over.
Oh yeah, you need that kind of a back. And of course, Ted Brown could be just the opposite. He lost his starting job to Darren Nelson a few weeks during the season, but yet he stayed in there. He's continued to perform, and now he's starting again with Nelson having hamstring problems.
3rd and 5, ball at the 15. Play action pass. Ball is complete to Mike Mularkey. And it is out of his hands, into and out of his hands. You know, that's the second time this afternoon that we've seen a Viking receiver have the ball into his hands and go right out of it.
And that ball seemed to be easily catchable. He's just out in the flat. He just couldn't get him his balance to hold on to that ball. And once again, 4 possessions now and 4 punts as Greg Coleman comes in to punt for the 4th time. He's not having a good afternoon, only averaging 34 yards a punt.
And like we mentioned before, he has a sore right knee, and that is probably part of the reason.
That'll teach him to run last week against Tampa Bay, but he thought he was going to have it blocked last week.
Fair catch signal by Mark Murphy. Now a little fight breaks out on the field. This is one of the things that you really expect to see, or you know you're going to see, when you have two teams who are really trying to battle for respectability, especially from the Packers, as Forrest Gregg is a fighter himself.
Forrest Gregg wants that physically tough, aggressive team, as we talked about at the top of the show, and he's starting to get it. We talked about him replacing the guards with Huffman and Hallstrom. I mean, two huge, powerful offensive linemen. Same philosophy on defense. He wants toughness.
He's telling us yesterday that he wants this team to adjust to him. He's not going to adjust to them. In other words, it's either my way or the highway.
My way or the highway. He sent a couple of people packing already.
1st and 10 for Green Bay. Ball at the 40-yard line of the Vikings. With good protection. Dickey coming to James Lofton. Out of bounds, covered there by Joey Brown. Of course, Lofton doesn't like it, but being the all-pro professional that he is, Lofton just says, okay, I'll just come back and get you the next time.
And of course, Lofton is exactly that, one of the best receivers in the game, and having a good year, close to 1,000 yards coming in today, 970 yards in receptions.
Scores today: Buffalo leading New England 7-0 in the first quarter. New Orleans over Atlanta 10-0. And Washington leading Detroit 7-0 in the first period. James Lofton starting his 100th consecutive game here with the Green Bay Packers. 2nd and 10, ball still at the 40-yard line. Here's a reverse to Eddie Lee Ivory. Eddie Lee tackled by Neil Elshire. And with Eddie Lee carrying, that should be the last play here in the first period. And there's the gun. Winds here at County Stadium blowing about 20 miles an hour out of the west. Temperatures in the low 30s. As we begin the second period of action, I'm Jim Hill along with John Dockery. The Green Bay Packers lead the Minnesota Vikings 7-0. Packers have the ball 3rd and 10 at the Viking 40-yard line. And here's the draw play going to Gary Ellis. Ellis to the 20. Gary Ellis finally tackled by Carl Lee.
And Ellis talked about Eddie Lee Ivory's arrival and his performance as spurring him on. With Ivory doing so well, it forces me to play better. But watch Tommy Hannon, number 45, has a clean shot and just loses his balance, doesn't make the tackle. Ellis takes it upfield for a big gain for the Pack on the ground, 1st down.
A pickup of 27 yards on the play. Del Rogers checks into the backfield now for the Green Bay Packers. Here's a handoff to Rogers. Rogers first hit by Tom Hannon.
And you know what? It's interesting when you look at the Packers' 23-13 win against the Saints last week. They had 207 yards rushing and only 166 passing. That's the first time in 2 years that they had more on the ground than through the air as they start to get their running game going here in the second quarter.
Ellis checks back into the ball game, number 31 for Del Rogers, as the Packers using 4 running backs. They feel like they have a great arsenal of running backs, and they're going to get them all into the ball game this afternoon. 2nd and 5, ball at the 8. Jefferson in motion. Here's Dickey back to pass. Throws complete to James Lofton, and it gets out of his hands. Tom Hannon covering for the Minnesota Vikings.
Lofton's having a tough day. Take a look. He's just delaying coming over the middle. The ball is thrown high. Dickey doesn't like it. He says to himself, come on, James, you're all pro. Make this catch. Take a look for yourself. It's up high. He has his hands on it, and then he juggles it even before Tommy Hannon hit him.
So the wide receivers this afternoon having a tough day of it. The wind, obviously, in the cold weather having something to do with it. Ed West checks into the lineup now for the Packers, giving them 2 tight ends. 3rd and 5, ball at the 8. It's Jefferson in motion. The ball complete, this time to Gary Ellis. Ellis tackled immediately by number 55, Scott Studwell. There is a flag on the play.
Gary Ellis, flags on the play.
Interesting situation. You want that. You want a good back, a good pass receiving running back like Gary Ellis, one-on-one on Scott Studwell. That was the case there. Ellis wasn't able to do anything. Studwell had great position.
Illegal motion, number 86, offense, penalty declined, 4th down.
And Studwell made the tackle, but the penalty.
It was on Ed West, who had just checked into the ball game, and Forrest Gregg does not like mental mistakes like that. He really does not like that. He says there's no excuse for going in and doing and making those kinds of mental mistakes because we all make the physical mistakes. Al Del Greco.
Will attempt the field goal.
Del Greco is in now.
Criminal hold.
The ball will be spotted at the 15, which will make it a 25-yard field goal. And Del Greco is perfect, 6 for 6.
Oh.
Partially blocked, but it is good.
Del Greco is 7 for 7, but that ball was tipped.
Del Greco, who just kicked the 25-yard field goal for the Packers, is all set to kick off. Green Bay leads at 10-0. This is Alfred Anderson at about the 12-yard line. Anderson slips and falls as he gets over the 20-yard line. Covered there by Guy Prather once again. Next Saturday on CBS Sports, college football, a doubleheader. The first game, the Michigan Wolverines going against the Ohio State Buckeyes.
What an important game for Ohio State. If they win this game, they will go to the Rose Bowl against a team that you know very well.
A team that clinched a Rose Bowl berth on yesterday. The USC Trojans going back to the Rose Bowl for the first time in 5 years, their annual crosstown rivalry against UCLA. 2 good college football games next week. Here's the inside handoff going to Ted Brown. Brown getting over the 25-yard line before he's tackled by Randy Scott.
Now you look at the Minnesota Vikings and you look at their offense. They've had the ball 4 times. They've punted 4 times. It's time for them to open up a little bit here in the second quarter as you look at the clock ticking down and put some of the onus on Wade Wilson. You can't get too far behind. The Packers have a good defense. You must stay in the game in the first half and not let it slip away.
Packers trying to confuse the young quarterback, changing their defensive alignment. Here's Wilson back to pass. Throws down the far sideline. Flag is thrown as the pass was intended for Sammy White. Tim Lewis and Tom Flynn over defending for the Green Bay Packers, but there is a flag on the play. Pass interference called against the Packers.
Illegal contact foul, number 26, defense, automatic 1st down.
You know, you're only allowed to bump the wide receiver once in that 5-yard area. Tim Lewis was doing a little more than that. Take a look at him, bump and run. He's on the outside. He wants to funnel the wide receiver, Sammy White, inside. White wants to go outside. He stays with him, and then puts that left arm on him a second time, and that's the penalty.
Some people might say, oh, that's kind of a ticky-tack penalty there.
Kind of incidental.
Yes.
This is a contact game, folks.
1st and 10, ball at the 33. Here's the inside reverse to Ted Brown. Brown gets away from Tim Lewis before he's run out of bounds there by number 52, George Cumby.
Mike Jones got an outstanding block on the safety, Mark Wilson, to allow him to get outside and make a few yards.
So Ted Brown, who has replaced Darren Nelson, is making the most of his starting opportunity. Nelson was the starting running back, pulled a hamstring muscle, and Ted Brown got his old spot back and doing an excellent job. Pickup of 6 yards on the play, 2nd and 4. Ball at the 39-yard line of the Minnesota Vikings. Packers changing the defensive alignment. It's Mike Jones in motion. Here's a draw play to Alfred Anderson. Anderson finally tackled by number 37, Mark Murphy. So the Vikings are, would you say they're pretty much staying in somewhat of a shell right now, John? They aren't being explosive in trying to attack that defensive alignment of the Packers.
They're trying to play within the capabilities of Wade Wilson. Of course, this is only the 3rd start of his 4-year career. He won last week. He also won last year against the Forrest Gregg Cincinnati Bengals at that time. So I think they're trying to pull in the reins a little bit. They'd be a different offense with Tommy Kramer.
Here's Wilson back to pass. Going to Leo Lewis. Ball is complete. Tackle made by Tim Lewis.
You have to do more of that. You have to throw the ball, show confidence in your quarterback, confidence in your offense, and take a look at it here. Leo Lewis on the outside. Not spectacular, but it gets the ball. It's Lewis against Lewis. Leo versus Tim.
And a pickup of 8. 2nd and 2. Ball at the 47-yard line of the Packers. Handoff goes to Ted Brown. Brown picking up enough yardage for the first down. Run out of bounds there by number 37, Mark Murphy. They've run quite a bit of the draw plays, the inside handoffs. It looks like they're trying to misdirect the Packer defense a little bit.
They did. That's the kind of thing you want to do when you have a defense that pursues very well. And in accordance with the philosophy of Forrest Gregg, that defense is much more aggressive. They are a very active group of linebackers. They pursue well, so those misdirection plays have a chance of working, and they have been working for the Vikings here in the second quarter.
In fact, the Packers faking the blitz. Oh, and Alfred Anderson is hit right at the line of scrimmage by Randy Scott. Scott met him right at the line of scrimmage. That's one of the strong points of this Packer defense. Their linebackers play exceptionally well. Pickup of only a yard. 2nd and 9, ball at the 39-yard line of the Packers. Green Bay leading Minnesota 10-0. 10 minutes and 50 seconds left to go in the first half. Here's a handoff to Ted Brown. Brown maintaining his balance, putting his hand down, getting inside the 30-yard line, where it's going to be very close, and it is enough yardage for the first down. Mark Murphy coming over to make the tackle.
Ted Brown does it week in and week out. Last year was the first time in 4 years he didn't lead the team in rushing and receiving. Here, watch a good block, the lead block there by number 66, Terry Tausch, and then it's all Brown keeping his balance, making some good yardage.
As we mentioned, enough yardage for the first down. Ball at the 30-yard line of the Packers. There's that little inside reverse again to Alfred Anderson. This time, no gain. As a matter of fact, he may have lost a yard as Cumbie comes up. George Cumbie comes up to make the tackle.
And one of the things that the Green Bay Packers are doing, and you're seeing more of it in the NFL every week, Chicago's very successful, is bringing at least 2 of their linebackers. There you see number 52, Cumbie, blitzing. Also, the other side is blitzing Scott. And they get more pressure. They get at least 2 linebackers coming. They get those 3 defensive linemen. So that's 5 people rushing the pass. They're also filling the holes on the running play. So it's good against the pass and the run. 3-3 defense of the Packers. Very successful all year long.
9:30 left to go in the first half. Wilson to pass. Throwing, and it is complete. This time to Mike Jones. Mike Jones tackled by Mike Douglas.
Mike Jones made a reception.
So the Vikings on this particular drive doing a good job. Running the ball very well and throwing sparingly.
Sparingly, high percentage possession passes, things that Wilson can do. They don't want him to overextend himself, maybe make a mistake. Last week, Les Steckel liked his performance, but he didn't like the 2 interceptions that he's thrown. He doesn't want that to happen today. Turnovers will kill a team.
3 tight ends now for the Vikings. 3rd and 2, ball at the 22. Hand off to Anderson. Contact first made by Donnie Humphries, and he's tackled by Terry Jones. Looks like we're getting very close to a field goal situation for the Vikings.
And boy, was he a Packer favorite, Jan Stenerud. And when you think about his performance last year, he was responsible for 5 of the 8 Packer victories last season, so they miss Jan Stenerud.
There's a timeout on the field, charge to the Minnesota Vikings as Wade, the former Green Bay Packer, Jan Stenerud, checks in now. Picture all over the paper today. Stenerud returning home. Ball will be placed at the 29. It'll be a 39-yard field goal attempt. Greg Coleman holding. Stenerud is perfect from this distance. And he does it again. Jan Stenerud. who won the ball game for the Minnesota Vikings last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, comes in and kicks a 39-yard field goal. The Vikings finally get on the scoreboard. 8 minutes and 12 seconds left to go in the first half. It's 10-3. Packers go 57 yards, 11 plays, 5:15 time on the clock. 39-yard field goal by Jan Stenerud. It's now 10-3 in favor of Green Bay. Bill Rogers at the 7-yard line. Bill Rogers gets up to about the 29-yard line before he's tackled by Chris Martin.
About the 28-yard line. First ball, first down.
County Stadium, 56,000 fans.
Fond memories for Jim Hill, who played many games here with the Green Bay Packers. What do you remember most about it?
Cold weather. Very, very, but I will have to admit, some of my best days in my pro football career were here in County Stadium, as well as at Lambeau Field in Green Bay with the Packers.
Football the way it should be played, out in the air, the elements, tough on the grass. A lot of people would say that.
Yeah, but as we sit up here now, we say, oh, we're so glad to be in the booth where we are. Packers take over, 1st and 10, ball at their 29-yard line. Then Dickey handing off to Gary Ellis. Gary Ellis tackled by number 56, Chris Martin. Also 65, Charlie Johnson. And here's some other scores today. San Francisco over the Cleveland Browns 13-0 in the first half. A 3-3 tie in the second period between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Look at, is this baseball? Indianapolis 3, New York 2.
7th inning.
Ball on the 33-yard
7-7, Buffalo and New England in the second quarter. Pick up a 4-yard 2nd and 6. Dickey back to pass. Hit as he passes the ball, and it is incomplete. John Jefferson, the nearest receiver for the Green Bay Packers.
Interesting that we see number 79, Doug Martin, in the game for the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, Doug, the #1 draft choice back in 1980. Dickey that time got a lot of pressure. Take a look at it again. From a team, that's Charlie Johnson fighting his way up the middle, doesn't get there, but from the outside, the ball is tipped, and afterwards, Dickey was shaking his hand a little bit like he banged it on someone's shoulder pad or helmet.
And
appears to be all right.
And especially in this cold weather, you know it hurts even more that way.
Oh, everything's more painful in the cold.
3rd and 6. Ball at the 33. Dickey set to pass again. Good protection this time. Throwing across the middle, intended for Phillip Epps, tipped in the air, bounces around Joey Browner, almost came up with the interception, but it is incomplete. So the Packers very lucky then that the ball was not intercepted.
It's the old tip drill. Watch it. Looks like Olympic volleyball. Will you tip it? I'll get it. Take a look at it again. Off Epps. Ball is up in the air. That's number 39, Carly, who tips it. Browner comes by. He can't get it. Rufus Best says, I'll try. No dice. As the ballet in the defensive backfield continues.
Bucky Scribner now into punt for the Packers. Aaron Nelson, number 20, to receive for Minnesota at his 25-yard line. Pretty good kick by Scribner. Ball bounces. Here's Nelson. He's hit and fumbles. Minnesota comes up and gets the ball anyway. This is Leo Lewis. And Leo Lewis, the only man between him and the goal line is Scribner. He gets away from him. Tackle made by number 25, Harlan Huckabee. And Harlan Huckabee just made a touchdown-saving tackle as Leo Lewis comes up with a great punt return after Darren Nelson got belted.
Gary Hayes was the man. Take a look at number 27, what he does. Ooh, bingo with the helmet, but wisely picked up there, right there. By number 87, watching Leo Lewis, wise, almost breaks away. As you say, final Huckabee gets him from behind, brings him down, makes the tackle, saves the touchdown. What an alert play by Lewis.
That's just pure hustle is what that is. Everybody going to the ball because you never know what kind of crazy... 10-3, Green Bay over Minnesota. 1st and 10 for the Vikings. And off to Ted Brown. Brown getting up to about the 41-yard line of the Green Bay Packers before he's tackled by Mark Murphy.
And obviously the Minnesota Vikings believe they can run the ball against the Green Bay Packers. Of course, a defense last year that was last in the NFL, much improved this year as they sit around the middle of the NFL in rankings on defense.
And I don't think that Les Stecker is going to panic at all, even though he's down by 7 points. There's all kinds of time, 6 minutes and 30 seconds left to go in the first half. Stecker told us yesterday he has a few trick plays in store for the Packers. We'll see when those come up. Here's Ted Brown again. As the Vikings continue to run misdirection plays, angling off in one direction, going into another, trying to really confuse and make the Packer defense commit to one side, go back to the other. Bill Neal and Mark Murphy making the tackle then.
Well, they're playing against a young defensive line. When you look at the Packers, they have two of their top draft choices are playing in. Number 76, Alfonso Carrick, and Donnie Humphrey, the other end. So you're working against young defensive linemen. You can trap them, you can misdirect them as they learn to play the game. And certainly they're doing that, and they've been a big difference for the Packers this year on defense.
Ball at the 39-yard line of Green Bay. Here's Wilson. Fakes the pass, feels some pressure, throws downfield. Intended for Mike, or rather Steve Jordan. However, good defense there by John Anderson.
And John Anderson is one of the fine defenders at linebacker in the NFL and covering receivers. And that time he was on the tight end, played it well, and almost came up with the interception.
So we talked about those active Packer linebackers. There's a perfect example of them. Running around, swarming all over the field, doing a good job making tackles and knocking passes down.
But you also saw a perfect example of Wade Wilson pulling the ball down. He saw he didn't have anyone open, and then he bought some time for himself by scrambling to the outside, even though it was incomplete.
Here's Greg Coleman into punt again for Minnesota.
Great sweep to the
Tom Flynn, the Packers inside his 10-yard line, set to receive. Coleman not having a good day at all. And another short punt. This time it'll be Flynn at about the 5-yard line. Flynn gets up to about the 10-yard line before he's tackled there. The tackle made by number 64, Grant Thiesel. Punt of about 34 yards, and you wonder if the ball should have just let the ball go inside. Anytime it gets inside the 10-yard line, you're supposed to do 5 minutes and 20 seconds left to go in the first half. Packers have the ball 1st and 10 at their own 11-yard line. Here's Lynn Dickey at quarterback. Little misdirection play by the Packers goes to Jesse Clark. Let's check some other scores in the NFL today. New Orleans over Atlanta 10-7, I should say, in the second period. Houston leading Kansas City 7-3. And Washington big over Detroit 21-0.
And sure will. They'll be watching that second game. They want to be in the playoffs, of course. That NFC East crowded as Washington, St. Louis, the Giants, and Dallas all fight for first place in the NFC East.
Lee Ivory checks into the ball game. However, the handoff goes to Jesse Clark, and he's hit immediately. The Vikings on defense starting to show a little spark of their own, trying to really get something started.
And they are one of the, when you look at statistics, they are one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They rank 25th, and that, my friends, is Doug Martin. They need him badly. He's been injured. He was the man that led them in sacks in '83 with 13. He's a first-rate defensive lineman. He's been hurt along with Mulaney, so they've got no pressure whatsoever on the passers. He's back playing this afternoon.
Wearing a hockey goaltender's kind of face mask there to protect his eye injury. Here comes the blitz by Minnesota. Put enough pressure on Lynn Dickey, throws a pass incomplete. John Jefferson and Gary Ellis, the closest receivers there for Green Bay. And that's one of the things that the Vikings really want to do. They want to get a lot of pressure on Dickey, and they really have to start something because they're still trying to find themselves as a football team.
They definitely are. And look at Forrest Gregg saying to Dickey, look, gentlemen, why can't you pick up the blitz? Lynn Dickey, you've been around this league 14 years. Kaufman, you're supposed to be one of the best tight ends in the business. When the blitz comes, break it off, blitz control, and get the completion. He is hot. I don't blame him.
I don't think he really needs to wear that jacket on the sideline right now, as warm as he is. Here's the punt by Bucky Scribner. Here's Darren Nelson, the 48-yard line. Nelson jitterbugging his way around. Finally tackled by John Dorsey. That's the kind of fight that we just saw out of Forrest Gregg that he wants to get over to his ball club. I mean, he's that kind of guy. He's not going to take anything at all. A punt of 39 yards. Minutes still unhappy. Packers have the lead, but he's not satisfied at all. Here's Wilson back to pass. Corner blitz is picked up. Tossed to Ted Brown. Brown gets up to about the 45-yard line before he's tackled by John Anderson and George Cumby. Coming up at halftime, scores and highlights with Brennan Irv. All the action in the National Football League today. Also, legends of the game with Sid Luckman.
Some say Sid Luckman was the best quarterback ever to play the game. You know what's interesting? He was the first man to throw for 400 yards. He had 437 yards, 7 TDs versus the Giants way back when. He was a good one. Halftime.
Look forward to that feature. 3 minutes and 10 seconds left to go in the first half. Wilson back to pass. Throwing down the far sidelines. Bumped out of bounds there. It's Darren Nelson coming out of the backfield. It's Mark Murphy over defending for Green Bay. One of the things that the Vikings are trying to do with Darren Nelson is they're trying to use him in all kinds of ways, running out of the backfield. They line him up at a wide receiver position. There he is right there, lined up at the wide receiver.
And some say that might be his better position. The ball is just overthrown here as he tries to throw it between the zones. Actually, it looked like Nelson might have had a shot. Flynn bumps him a little bit early, but no interference call.
3rd and 8, ball at the 45-yard line.
Vikings having no luck on 3rd down. They're 0 for 6 third down conversions, Jim.
They'll try and convert this one. Here comes the pressure. Deep down the middle of the field. And it's complete to Mike Jones. Tackle finally made by Tom Flynn. Mike Jones, who did an excellent job of really coming back for the ball then. And that is another thing that you know Forrest Gregg is upset about. You should never, according to Forrest Gregg, you don't like those passes, and they shouldn't be completed that far right down the middle of the field.
But when this ball was thrown, watch number 38, Estes Hood. He has perfect position for the interception. See him right there? But he can't stop and come back. Mike Jones can. How many times have you seen that? Had the ball been thrown well, Estes Hood would have made the interception. It was thrown poorly, completion.
First down at the 15. It's a handoff to Alfred Anderson. Anderson, first contact made by number 79, Donnie Humphrey.
And neither team is really taking control of this game yet. The momentum could go either way. Packers lead at 10-3. Minnesota driving with 2-minute warning coming up here at the half.
Vikings first-string quarterback on the sidelines, and he is in total support right now of young Wade Wilson.
He definitely is, but when you ask Les Steckel about who's the quarterback of my team, he said, well, right now if Wade Wilson continues to win, he'll play, but Tommy Kramer is my quarterback when he's healthy.
Right now he's on the sidelines, and it's on the shoulders of young Wade Wilson. 2nd and 9, ball at the 14. Oh, the blitz is coming in by Tom Flynn, but he gets it up. Touchdown, pass is complete to Steve Jordan.
Steve Jordan on the touchdown.
And you watch a young quarterback maturing. The blitz, Tom Flynn, number 41, in Wade Wilson's face. Just as he turned around, Wilson instinctively knew when your blitz is coming, your tight end will be open over the middle. He throws it before Jordan even comes. See him coming up the middle there. Flynn throws it. He's wide open. Jordan, of course, that's a mistake by Mark Murphy, number 37. He should have been on Jordan over the middle. He wasn't. And the Pack has a chance to tie on the extra point.
Well, Wilson was looking right in the direction of the blitz, and he, like you said, he knew immediately. So now Jan Stenerud is in to attempt the extra point conversion and tie the game for Minnesota. Right down the middle, and it is good.
Stenerud is good.
So young Wade.
That time, he, of course, got the touchdown from a maturing Wade Wilson under pressure.
And Forrest is really hot. I mean, he is steaming right now. He does not like to see those big plays made against his defense. He does not like mental errors made by anyone.
And he might be a little surprised because he talked about his defense playing close to its potential and playing well all year long. That drive, they did not play well.
So here's Stenerud coming to kick off. Philip Epps back to receive for the Packers, but this is Del Rogers. Bill Rogers gets up to about the 28-yard line before he's finally tackled there.
28-yard line.
Coming up right after our ball game, the second half of our doubleheader. The Chicago Bears going against the Los Angeles Rams, and that's going to feature the two top running backs in the National Football League today.
The best. Look at Eric Dickerson leads the NFL, 1,160 yards. Walter Payton not far behind, 1,112 yards, showcasing the best in the game running the ball. Next here on CBS.
Bears and the Rams from Anaheim, California. Don't forget, coming up right after our ball game, so stay right where you are. 1:53 left to go in the first half. Packers have the ball 1st and 10 at their own 29-yard line. Score is tied at 10. Dickey with protection, throwing the screen pass out to Gary Ellis. Good job by Walker Lee Ashley coming up and making the tackle. Now the Packers in their hurry-up offense. 1:40 left to go in the first half. Pickup of only a couple of yards. 2nd and 8. Ball at the 31. Flag is down on the field. Ball complete to Gary Ellis again. Tackle made by Tom Hannon. But once again, there is a flag on the play. The Vikings are indicating it is against Green Bay, and it is indeed against the Packers for illegal motion. These are the kinds of things, you know, we talked about the things that Forrest Gregg does not like.
Illegal motion, number 80, offense, 2nd down.
Call against James Lofton, and of course I'm sure after having played under Forrest Gregg that he's going to let the Packers know at halftime about those mental mistakes, the physical mistakes. He has a way of getting his point across in a hurry. 2nd and 13. Ball on the 26-yard line. 1:24 left to go in the first half. Jefferson in motion. Dickey back to pass. Going deep, intended for Lofton, and it is complete. He's tackled there by Carl Lee. It is enough yardage for the first down. At the 41-yard line. The Packers again trying to get into field goal range for Jan Stenerud, already for their fine field goal kicker. Al Del Greco. Jan Stenerud used to be with the Packers. Here's Dickey again. And Jefferson slipped and fell.
And that's just part of the field that is a little bit damp. It rained yesterday here in Milwaukee. Jefferson trying to make the out cut, slipped and fell. The incompletion stops the clock. But one of the things that the Green Bay Packers, as you look at the timeouts remaining, Green Bay has 3. Packers have been able to protect their quarterback for the last couple of weeks. They've only allowed 1 sack in each of the last 2 games. So Dickey has been getting time. The offensive line is maturing, and they've been able to throw the ball and also to run the ball.
59 seconds left in the first half. That Packer offensive line has been the most improved part of this whole team, according to Forrest Gregg. Protecting Dickey now. Across the middle, in out of the hands of Eddie Lee Ivory. Scott Studwell in defending.
Excuse me, Jim. Evidence of the offensive line doing the job again. Dickey had plenty of time. The ball was just poorly thrown to Eddie Lee Ivory out of the backfield.
That play only took 4 seconds off the clock. 55 seconds left to go in the first half. A 10-10 tie. The Vikings just hanging right in there against the more explosive Green Bay Packer offense. Here comes the blitz. Studwell gets picked up. Going deep for Jefferson. And he's got it. John Jefferson. Touched by Rufus Best.
The reason he was open is they were double covering Lofton on this side. Rufus Best had one-on-one coverage on John Jefferson. Dickey read it perfectly, led Jefferson down over the middle for the completion and a big first down.
Green Bay.
Green, take a look at it again. On the right side, they're double covering. That takes the free safety away, leaves the middle wide open. He leads Jefferson perfectly. Best is trailing. John Jefferson makes the reception. 33-yard reception for John Jefferson. And today we see Jefferson more a part of the Green Bay offense than he's been all season long.
And when you talk to him, you know, John, he told you that this year for him has been very disappointing because he's the kind of guy who he wants the ball to come to him in clutch situations.
And he's a man. I mean, he said it almost sarcastically. He said, yeah, I'm not having much of a year. I haven't even had a 100-yard game. Wouldn't it be nice if I had one of those? Of course, Jefferson throughout his career has had 2,200-yard games. So he's a man that's used to success. He's already got 3 receptions today for good yardage.
And as Max McGee told us earlier, he mentioned it early in the ball game, he expects Jefferson to have a good game this afternoon. 49 seconds left to go in the first half.
First down.
Packers have the ball at the Viking 25-yard line. The blitz is on, but it's picked up down the middle to Paul Kaufman. Over his head. Time out, but there is a flag on the play. The official looking at Tommy Hannon, throwing a flag. And Hannon is just thoroughly upset, but here's the call.
That's the call. Anytime you're doubling one receiver the way they're doing with Lofton, it leaves the others open.
Illegal contact foul. Number 45. Defense. Automatic first down.
Tommy Hannon tried to come back to help out on Paul Kaufman, number 82, going down the middle. The result was a bump and a penalty.
And a first down. And the ball was completely over Kaufman's head. There was no way that he was going to catch it at all.
First down.
44 seconds left to go in the first half. Play action pass. Complete to Kaufman. Kaufman tackled by Fred McNeil and Rufus Best before he's knocked out of bounds, but there is another flag on the play.
McNeil forced him out of bounds.
Kaufman is one of the reasons this offense is now picking itself up. Take a look at him. Quick out. He just plays off the linebacker, number 54, Fred McNeil, makes the catch. He's thrown out of bounds. But take a look at Jefferson. Jefferson's one-on-one man coverage. Felt he was open. Take a look at it right here. As he bumps in, a little bit of a pick. Jefferson hamming it up a little bit.
It was not a flag on the play, but here's the pass complete, intended for Paul Kaufman, inside the 5, tackled by Tom Hannon. There's a timeout on the field. We mentioned a little while ago that there was a flag on the play. However, the official just picked it up. It looked like it just dropped right out of his pocket. But the Packers at this end of the field, this is one of the areas where they are very, very dangerous. I mean, they can do a lot of different things down here.
No doubt about it. They have all the weapons to do that. They're 3 fine wide receivers and a good running game.
Coming up at halftime, don't forget, all the scores and highlights with Brent and Irv. And legends of the game, Sid Luckman.
Great quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Also, the men, the Bears are good now. Remember way back in 1946 when he took them to an NFL championship. Now the Bears looking good again.
As the Bears lead the NFC's Central Division, don't forget, you'll be able to see the Chicago Bears going against the Los Angeles Rams coming up right after our telecast. Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, that rough and tough Bear defense.
And 2 quarterbacks that didn't start the season for either team. Of course, Jeff Kemp for the Rams, and McMahon is hurt, so Steve Fuller steps in for the Chicago Bears.
The former Ram quarterback and Steve Fuller going against his former teammates. That's coming up right after our game. 33 seconds left to go in the first half. Play action pass. Going to Kaufman in the end zone. Tipped away at the last second by Tom Hannon.
And you talk about being lucky. Dickey knew it. I had Kaufman open. I just didn't throw the ball where I should have. But Tommy Hannon actually put his hand out, never saw the ball, and was lucky the ball tipped over. Take a look at it again. Here's the fake. He holds the defense, and then Hannon tries to recover. See him stick his hand out there just by accident. Sometimes better to be lucky than in position.
Because he was out of position when he saw Kaufman go by him. I know what he said. Oh
my
no.
goodness.
Yes. But he got away with it. 28 seconds left. Reverse.
The ball is fumbled.
Ed West. Ed West on the tight end reverse goes in for the score. completely fooling the Minnesota Vikings. So we talked about how dangerous the Packers are when they get this close to the end zone. They can do all kinds of things. We saw a play-action pass intended for Paul Kaufman that was incomplete. And they come right back with a tight end reverse and goes in for the score.
Some creative offense by Forrest Gregg and his staff.
Al Del Greco comes in now for the extra point conversion. Bucky Scribner will hold. And it's good. So after a tight end reverse to Ed West.
Nice faking by Dickey, like a dealer in a casino. Watch him move that ball around, move those hands around. Fake, delivers the ball, hides it. West not showing great speed, gets in the end zone before he fumbles the ball. The Pack gets a touchdown and takes the lead.
23 seconds left to go in the first half.
Nice drive, 9 plays, 71 yards. Ed West takes it in on a 2-yard run. And that's the kind of thing you can do with an experienced quarterback and a balanced offensive team. You can move in that 2-minute drill. Of course, the big play was the pass to Jefferson down the middle for the completion.
Jefferson having a good first half for him, one of the best first halves he's had in a long, long time.
He's already caught 3 passes for 59 yards, including that 33-yarder down the middle to help to set up that touchdown.
Del Greco in to kick. Darren Nelson and Alfred Anderson set to receive for Minnesota. Ball takes a crazy hop. Lateral back to Darren Nelson. Nelson gets across the 30 up to about the 32-yard line. 18 seconds left. Tackle made by Estes Hood. So you wonder right now, John, all the Vikings try to do. You know, they have 18 seconds left on the clock.
I think with a young quarterback, with Wade Wilson only making his 3rd start of his career, I think with them being within a touchdown, I don't think they want to do anything stupid here, have an interception, maybe give the Pack a chance for a field goal. So I think they'll run out the clock and go in at halftime, talk about it, and see if they can come back.
And when you think about it, being only down by a touchdown, maybe they should be fairly pleased at this point. 3 wide receivers to the near sideline. Call that the Big Ben formation. Wilson looks like he's going to air it out. Everyone's covered, and he starts to run. Runs out of bounds after he picks up enough yardage for the first down.
And a wise choice by Wade Wilson. Rather than just throwing it up and having it intercepted and possibly run back, he decides to tuck it away and run with it.
That play took 8 seconds off the clock. A Big Ben formation. Just throw it up and just let it fall wherever it may. But once again, we're seeing where Wade Wilson is showing some signs of maturity of a veteran quarterback by not just throwing it away. This time, the Vikings have 3 wide receivers to the far sideline. Wilson. Pass is incomplete, intended for Dwight Collins. Estes Hood, the 5th defensive back for the Packers, in defending. 5 seconds left to go in the first half. Kind of surprised that they would try this kind of offense.
Well, I think they're in one way, it's very, very interesting that they do this. They're showing confidence in their young quarterback. They're showing confidence in their offense. They're not just going into their shell and going into the locker room, but they're also doing it in a safe way. You don't see him throwing the ball over the middle for interceptions. If he can't complete it, he'll either run or throw it away.
2nd and 10. Here's the blitz. The blitz is on. It was picked up, however. Wade Wilson was tackled in by Ezra Johnson. Ezra Johnson trying to come back from the injuries that he's had so far this year. He's been one of the best defensive linemen in all of professional football. But that's the end of the first half. So after 30 minutes here at County Stadium in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the Green Bay for the Minnesota Vikings. 17-10, and here we go for the second half. Ball bounces off Alfred Anderson at the 5-yard line. Whistle is blown. The ball will remain with the Minnesota Vikings. Guy Prather in making the tackle. So here comes young Wade Wilson. Young man who has done an outstanding job for the Minnesota Vikings as he has been their starting quarterback due to the injury to Tommy Kramer.
Perfect record in his starts. He beat Cincinnati last year in the last game for the Vikings, and last week against Tampa Bay, a victory 27-24. He's trying for number 3 today.
But they trail 17-10. Here we go, 1st and 10. The toss back to Alfred Anderson. Anderson trying to get to the outside. Picks up a couple of yards before he's tackled by John Anderson and Mark Lee.
And what a block by Mike Jones on number 37, Mark Murphy on that run. Crackback block took Murphy to the ground, gave Anderson a little bit of running room.
He picked up about 3 yards. So it'll be 2nd and 7.
You look at Anderson's stats, 10 yards, 10 carries, that is, for 22 yards. Not exactly an awesome afternoon for this young man who early in the season really showed some spark in the running game for the Minnesota Vikings.
Split backfield now for Minnesota. Wilson back to pass. Right off the shoulder pads of Alfred Anderson. Tackle there made by Randy Scott, who was defending and knocked Anderson down.
You know, Alfred Anderson isn't one of those typical Minnesota Viking backs. Remember the Chuck Foreman's, great receiver out of the backfield, the Ted Browns, the Darren Nelsons. Anderson is more of a runner. Coming into today's game, he had caught 7 passes for just 8 yards. There you see him have trouble. He dropped 1 in the first half. So Anderson is more of the runner versus a traditional Minnesota back.
3rd and 7. Ball at the 25. Here's Wilson back to pass. Pretty good protection, but he was thrown short, intended for Ted Brown. Brown was wide open, but the Packers put on a great deal of pressure, causing the pass to be short and incomplete.
Applying the pressure. 4th down.
So once again, that Packer defense in spurts, changing the defensive alignment, trying to confuse young Wade Wilson, forcing the incompletion, and that brings in Greg Coleman. Tom Flynn back to receive for the Packers, and as we mentioned, Coleman has not had a good afternoon punting. Sore leg, cold weather, usually produces short punts. Coleman gets off a high punt. Goes out of bounds on the far sidelines. Ball will be marked at about the 41-yard line. A 37-yard punt. 13:51 left to go here in the 3rd period. It is Green Bay leading the Minnesota Vikings 17-10. And coming up next, right after our ball game, the Chicago Bears going against the Los Angeles Rams.
Just Chicago wants to protect that lead in the Central Division. You see him right there. Everyone chasing Chicago. They want to keep it that way.
Great year for Walter Payton and company. Coming up next, but right here is Gary Ellis. First contact made by Charlie Johnson.
But you talk about the Bears taking over control of the Central Division. A lot of people say, yeah, Walter Payton, he's done it year in and year out. And yes, the defense is spectacular, the best in the NFL, but people talk about McMahon as being the key.
Well, I think that he has been the key to that ball club this particular year. Gale Sayers said last week that Jim McMahon is the heart and soul of that Chicago Bear team, and without him, he feels that they are in trouble. But you'll be able to judge for yourself. That game coming up after hours.
Steve Fuller, the quarterback, of course, for Chicago. McMahon hurt.
Here's another fine quarterback, Len Dickey. Good protection. Pass is intercepted by Joey Browner. Joey Browner tackled by Jesse Clark on a pass that was intended for John Jefferson. So Joey Browner, who told us yesterday that he was going to play these Green Bay receivers tough, bump and run, comes up with a big turnover.
And he's big enough to do it. He's 6'2", 205. Take a look at him right here. He's in the slot. He's bumping JJ. He's staying with him. And then he makes a good break on the ball underneath. It's juggled, shows good hands, despite the fact that he's wearing gloves. A big interception for Joey Browner gives the Vikings field position and a break here early in the second half.
A 20-yard interception return. Vikings Vikings have the ball at the 32 of Green Bay. It's Wade Wilson back to pass. He has time. He throws. It's complete. Pass complete there to Ted Brown. Tackle by Mike Douglas. You know, when I talked to Joey Browner yesterday, you know, he came in, he said, you know, the Minnesota Vikings don't like to play and haven't played a lot of bump and run, he said, until I got here from USC.
That's right. And you know, the Vikings, he was a #1 draft choice, such athletic ability. They tried him at safety. He didn't work out. Some said it was just too complicated, too many assignments, too many adjustments. Whereas cornerback, it's a lot clearer. Physical ability is the bottom line at cornerback. He's doing well for the Vikings last week and again today.
Big play by him. 2nd and 4. Ball at the 28. Wilson back. Dumps it off to Alfred Anderson. Anderson gets away from Mike Douglas. Gets away from Tom Flynn. Gets into the end zone for the score. Alfred Anderson. Great running, but poor tackling by the Packers, and that produces another score for the Minnesota Vikings.
Anderson he has that body lean, he has that determination, but you're right. Anderson is being blocked. He can't make the tackle. Take a look at it right here. There he is, Anderson, right there. He gets blocked, and then he just runs through a whole host of tacklers right there. Tom Flynn had an excellent shot. He doesn't make the tackle. Anderson takes it in, and Minnesota is right back in this game with a chance to tie.
And the man to try and tie it, a former Packer, Jan Stinnerud. And he does. What a fine run, but once again, poor tackling on the part of the Packers. Not been able to apply the knockout punch to the Minnesota Vikings. It's tied at 17-17. Philip Epps back to receive along with Del Rogers. It's Del Rogers at the 6-yard line. Del Rogers gets up to about the 30-yard line. That's where the Packers will take over 1st and 10. Tackle made by Chris Martin.
And I have to agree with you. It's like a heavyweight fight. You knock the man down. If you don't put him out, he's liable to come back. Here, the Packers had the Vikings 10-zip early in the game, 1st quarter. They don't apply the pressure. The Vikings keep coming back, and now we have a tie game, 17-17.
Del Rogers is slow getting up. The Packers have an explosive offense, but they haven't been able to really knock out the Vikings, and here we are, 17-17. Gary Ellis in motion. Play action pass. Dickey with good protection. Going deep. Here's James Lofton. He comes back and makes a great reception. Tackle made by Rufus Best. A great example of the all-pro caliber of James Lofton.
Of his jumping ability also, but had Dickey gotten Lofton that ball sooner, it was Katie barred the door. He was gone. Instead, he allowed Rufus Best to recover. Take a look at it here. And he forced Lofton to come back, go up for it, and make a good play. Watch Lofton battling Best, takes it away from him for the completion.
Pickup of 33 yards. 1st and 10. Ball at the 37. A handoff to Eddie Lee Ivory. Eddie Lee tackled by Fred McNeil and also Scott Studwell. So the Packers trying now to apply that knockout punch that we've talked about, John.
But it has something to do, you mentioned the knockout punch, but it has something to do with the character and the tenacity of the Minnesota Vikings. You look at them on paper, they are not an overwhelmingly talented team. They are in a transition period, but yet they scratch, they claw, and they hang in there as they've done this afternoon.
Playing hard the entire game. That's what Les Steckel wants, and so far this year he's gotten it, even though they have just a record of 3-7. Here's Dickey. Blitz is picked up. Pass intended to Lofton is tipped. Tipped by Scott Studwell and falls incomplete.
Lynn Dickey tried to force that ball into Lofton. He waited, one lane opened up. He didn't hit him there. He was trying to wait for the 2nd lane, but by the time he threw it, there was reaction. See him in the slot there, number 80, Lofton, coming across the field. Now, if he hit him right now, he had it, but he waits, linebacker reacts, it's almost intercepted. But you know what Minnesota hasn't been able to do all year long? They only have 7 interceptions. They have board hands on defense. You can't hold anything.
They certainly haven't this afternoon, although they've tipped the ball away a couple of times. Here's a try to Eddie Lee Ivory. Eddie Lee bucks his way over Fred McNeil. finally tackled by Scott Studwell as he gets down to about the 25-yard line.
First down.
And it's hard for a team to win if you don't have an explosive offense, which certainly the Minnesota Vikings don't have without Tommy Kramer, and you don't have a defense that's dominant and overpowering. I mean, coming into this game, we talked about Minnesota having only 16 sacks. On top of that, Jim, they've only had 7 interceptions. Tough to win ball games with a defense like that.
Especially when you get into the second half of the season. You really expect more. 9 minutes and 51 seconds left to go in the third period. First and 10, all at the 25 of the Vikings. Dickey back to pass. Going into the corner, intended for Gary Ellis. Carl Lee defending for Minnesota.
You know, and you have to wonder about the motivation. Both these teams 3-7. Why do you come out and play? Well, you come out and play for a lot of reasons. As we look at the Viking, number 39, Carl Lee, on the ground in pain. But you talk about motivation. Why, as a 3-7 team, do you want to come out and play? Well, there's a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, one of them is to avoid the wrath of your coach. And you mentioned you played for Forrest Gregg. He can be a man that gets angry and ornery when you lose. Les Steckel's not a man that likes to lose either. He's a little more quiet about it, but certainly he's not going to have a team that doesn't give maximum effort.
Both these teams in similar situations.
Second and 10.
New coaches, tough schedules.
Same record.
And tied at 17. Second and 10 at the 25. Blitz is on. It's picked up. Dickey, complete to Paul Kaufman. Joey Browner and Matt Blair making the tackle for the Vikings. So that particular time, the blitz was picked up. And that enabled Paul Kaufman to make the reception on a fine pass from Lynn Dickey.
And that's just chemistry, communication between quarterback and receiver. Kaufman, when you see it, you'll see him between 2 Viking defenders. He hooks up, the ball is drilled in there. See him right there? That's Kaufman's sense on the field of where to find the open spot.
First and goal to go. Ball in the 10.
First and goal. Blitz is picked up again. Throwing to the end zone for Jefferson. Too far over his head. John Swain defending for the Minnesota Vikings.
You know, John Swain was guessing that J.J. was going outside. J.J. was in the slot, faked inside, but Swain, number 29, just hung on the outside, knew that's where he was going. And Dickey wisely just threw the ball away out of the end zone. John
Swain is a young man who has to make quite an adjustment on his part. He was a starting left corner. Now he's behind Joey Brown. And there's a psychological thing that you have to go through from being a starter and then all of a sudden you're a backup.
And you see Willie Teal playing in there also. He's been injured, hasn't played that much.
Here's Dickey again. That's Jefferson in motion. Dickey back to pass. John Haynes comes in and makes the sack on Lynn Dickey.
First sack of the afternoon for the Minnesota Vikings, and Dickey had Jesse Clark, number 33, wide open. Take a look, folks. Dickey, he gets a rush, but he had a back out of the backfield wide open. He didn't throw the ball. As you mentioned it, John Haynes, a rookie out of Texas, with the sack. First one this afternoon for the Minnesota Vikings. Take another look. Dickey has time now. He wants to throw, pulls it down, and then Haynes is right on him.
So the Vikings couldn't come at a better time. Ball now at the 18-yard line. Third down. You know the Packers are going to pass. Screen. Jesse Clark. He'll score. Jesse Clark. Screenplay. Touchdown, Green Bay. And I guarantee you, Forrest Gregg is still hot. I guarantee you he is. He wants more. Aldo Greco in to attempt the extra point conversion. It's tipped. but it's good anyway.
That's the second time it was tipped, second time he got lucky. The reason Jesse Clark scores on this screen pass is number 65 pulling out in front. That's the guard, Ron Hallstrom, 6'6", 283. Watch him get a block out in front, right there. You see him in front? He's burying the defensive back. That allows Clark.
54 seconds is the time that they used and was kept off by the screen play, which ended up in a touchdown. Now Green Bay has the lead 24-17. Packers came out with a little bite in that drive. Here's Del Greco. Ball going to Alfred Anderson at the 7-yard line. Anderson gets over the 20-yard line. Tackled by Guy Prather, who's having a pretty good day on special teams himself. So now let's see how the Minnesota Vikings respond. As young Wade Wilson comes back into the ballgame. They've had to come back time and time again this afternoon. They have refused just to fold up their tent. Well, let's see if now you wonder how the Packer defense is going to react, because the offense has come out. They've done a respectable job. Wade Wilson is on the spot. 1st and 10. Ball at the 22 of Minnesota. Packers faking the blitz. Toss back to Alfred Anderson. John Anderson comes up and makes the tackle.
Tackle by John Anderson.
Gets assist there from Randy Scott. Scores today in the 3rd quarter. San Francisco over Cleveland, 20-0. Philadelphia leading the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins coming back. It's now 17-14. New England leading Buffalo 17-10. Washington leading Detroit. The Lions have finally scored. It's 28-7 in the 3rd quarter. 24-17. Green Bay over Minnesota here. 8 minutes and 1 second left to go in the 3rd quarter. Handoff to Anderson. Anderson trying to find the funnel and get up the field. Tackle made by Randy Scott again.
You mentioned how the Green Bay Packer defense will react. Well, I think they're telling the Vikings how they're going to react. They're going to force them to make yardage in the first play. They came with the blitz. A couple of linebackers coming. Anderson strung it out for no gain. They give up a couple of yards. So they set up a passing situation. 3rd and about 6 for young Wade Wilson. So they're saying, look, Wade Wilson, we know you're young. You're going to have to do it. If you're going to beat us this afternoon, you're going to have to do it.
Vikings with 3 wide receivers to one side. The ball is thrown, and it is complete to Ted Brown. Tackle there made by Mike Douglas.
Very close. I think it's short, and it was a tackle by Douglas. You see him grab Brown by the arms, preventing him from getting that extra yard or so. If he had been able to gather himself and lean forward, he would have gotten the first down. He doesn't. So the Vikings are forced to punt.
Greg Coleman will do the punting.
And a big series of downs then for the Green Bay defense. Greg Coleman in to punt for Minnesota. Tom Flynn back to receive for the Packers. High snap, but Coleman gets it off anyway. And you got to be careful with that. Tom Flynn came over as though he was going to make the reception and jumped out of the way at the last second. Punt of some 45 yards. So the ball 1st and 10 at their own 25-yard line. Green Bay leads Minnesota. Play action pass. The ball is dumped off to Jesse Clark. Clark driven out of bounds on the far sidelines by Scott Studwell.
Clark, the receiver.
Next Saturday on CBS Sports, college football, a doubleheader, and these are going to be 2 fine games. The first game of the doubleheader, the Michigan Wolverines going against the Ohio State Buckeyes.
And if those Buckeyes win, they're going to be in the Rose Bowl. So we have the possibility next week on CBS of seeing both Rose Bowl teams, assuming Ohio State beats Michigan. And
in the second half of that doubleheader, we know one team that will be in the Rose Bowl, the USC Trojans going against the UCLA Bruins.
And they haven't been there in a while, have they?
5 years, and they're anxious to get back. 2nd and 5. Play action pass. Dickey throwing. Complete to Jefferson. Tackle made by Carl Lee.
Completion to Jefferson, number 39. Carl Lee.
Pickup of some 17 yards.
Take a look at Jefferson in the slot right here. Lofton goes down, clears out over the middle. Jefferson just on a quick out. The ball is delivered a little behind him. Still, it's a completion as Lee can't get there in time.
Jefferson so far this afternoon, 4 receptions for 79 yards, his longest 33. First and 10, ball at the 48-yard line. Play action pass again. Throwing deep, looking for Jefferson.
You know, Lofton and Jefferson were near one another, and you hear the booing because they thought that Joey Browner was on J.J. Jefferson early. I think he was looking for Lofton over the middle, a little shallower than Jefferson was going deep. So it's kind of a mix-up in that pattern.
But anytime, as you know, you have 2 receivers running in the same area, it's going to bring a lot of people from the defense.
Jim, had he been able to wait a split second longer, he would have gotten that ball to Lofton coming over the middle. The pressure forced him to throw it a little bit early.
The toss back to Eddie Lee Ivory. Eddie Lee breaking into the secondary. Eddie Lee Ivory getting down to the 35-yard line before he's tackled by Carl Lee and Rufus Best.
Eddie Lee Ivory making so many comebacks. What a career. 1979, he hurt his knee. Next year, he came back and had 800 yards, then hurt his knee again. And he's had his problems, but boy, he has been a spark the last couple of weeks. Take a look at him here on the sweep. And here's where he makes his cut up the middle. Likens himself to James Wilder in that respect, in that he has the ability to cut on the run. Top speed to make that cut.
Pickup of 17 yards, first and 10 at the 35 of Minnesota. Inside handoff to Gary Ellis.
Gary Ellis. Studwell.
Ellis tackled by Scott Studwell. Eddie Lee Ivory checks back into the ballgame.
Exactly as they alternate. I was just going to say Gary Ellis has been a starter and done well here in Green Bay, not having a great year. But Forrest Gregg is the first to tell us that since Ivory is doing so well, it's getting Ellis's attention. Ellis wants to remain the starter, really not interested in splitting time, so he's performed better.
Eddie Lee Ivory making Gary Ellis a better ball player. Second and 5. Ball at the 30. Here's a draw play to Eddie Lee Ivory again. Eddie Lee gets down to about the 18-yard line, tackled by Tom Hanna. And he is upset.
He thought he had another cut in him to get away from Tommy Hannon. He slips on the turf. And Eddie Lee Ivory will tell you that he's not the back he was when he first arrived with the Green Bay Packers in 1979. And maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he would have made this cut and been able to get away, but he wasn't. You see the tackle right there. Still a good game for the Pack. And Eddie Lee says, oh, no.
On the 18, first down.
And he feels awfully good about the way he has performed recently. 3 minutes and 10 seconds left to go in the third period. First and 10 at the 18. John Jefferson in motion. The toss back. Run pass by Gary Ellis. But he pulls it down and is forced out of bounds. Forced out by Matt Blair.
Wisely so, because they were looking for James Lofton. He was double covered by Tommy Hannon and Joey Browner in the end zone. He had no chance to complete that pass, so he just ran out of bounds. Smart play.
You know, a lot of times on a run pass by a halfback, you'll see the running back just throw it anyway.
He could have just thrown it up and out of the end zone for the incompletion, but you know, he's a running back. He's not a quarterback. He's not that sophisticated in dealing with throwing the ball.
But good judgment then on his part. Second and 13. The draw play to Eddie Lee Ivory. He slips and falls. Doug Martin in on the tackle for the Minnesota Vikings.
And Greg Cook appears to be still down on the ground. Of course, Cook has had some injury problems. They weren't sure he was going to play, but he's on the ground. And we're going to take a moment for an injury.
John, we all know that the Packers need this man back in the lineup, but of course, the injury to his leg, and he's had some problems.
He has some problems. They weren't sure whether he's going to play today. He's had some back problems. And here, if you look to the left of your screen, you'll see number 79. That's Martin against Cook, number 68. And Eddie Lee slips, and then Martin just pushes Cook back over Eddie Lee, and you see his knee bent over backwards. He's taken off the field. Greg Cook leaving the field with an injury. He appears to be walking fairly well, so maybe it isn't a serious injury.
Dave Dressler comes in. Sometimes when you get something like that, it's a hyperextension. And a lot of times you're able to shake it off, but we'll just have to wait and see. All on the 23-yard line. Good protection for Dickey. Complete to Philip Epps. Tackle made by Rufus Bess.
When you're busy watching Lofton and Jefferson, you know there's going to be single coverage on Philip Epps. He was wide open as everyone else was paying attention to the big man, the combination. And take a look here on the downside of your screen, closest to us. Watch Epps on the outside. All he does is hook up. You see everyone looking inside to Jefferson. Dickey delivers the ball. He almost gets into the end zone, very close.
Philip Epps, only 155 pounds and 5'9". First reception of the afternoon, good for 22 yards. A minute and 40 seconds left to go in the third period. First and goal at the 2. Handoff goes to Jesse Clark. And the Vikings say, no, not now. Scott Studwell, Walker Lee Ashley.
Scott Studwell, number 55. Listen, anybody that can break Dick Butkus's record for tackles at Illinois, you have to respect. Take a look at this hit. That is a major league hit right there by Scott Studwell. Take a look at it at ground level. This is about an 8 on the Richter scale. Bingo. Ooh. Minnesota showing character right down here on the goal line.
You saw his head snap back, so you knew he was really hit. Play action pass into the end zone. Jesse Clark scores. Once again, the Green Bay Packers fooling the Minnesota Vikings close to the goal line. Play action pass. If Jesse Clark can't get over running, he gets over scoring on a touchdown pass.
Jesse Clark gets his second touchdown. He scored last for the Packers on an 18-yard pass. Remember the screen, took it into the end zone right there. Fake, good play action. Clark is open in the end zone for the touchdown.
Al Del Greco in to attempt the extra point conversion. And it's good.
It is good.
One of the best things that Jesse Clark does is come out of the backfield and make those pass receptions, John.
And this is a play-action fake, helps him out a little bit. Tommy Hennon turns around, looking for the wide receiver. That leaves Clark wide open as Walker Lee Ashley doesn't get there in time, and the Packers take the lead.
11 plays, 75 yards, 5:41 on the clock. 2-yard touchdown pass to Jesse Clark from Lynn Dickey. 31-17. And you wonder, John, if that's that knockout punch we've been looking for all afternoon. We'll find out right now. Darren Nelson gets the ball at his 11-yard line. Special teams going down, making big hits now for the Green Bay Packers. Cliff Lewis in on the tackle.
And this Packer team looks different in the second half. Now, you played for this man, Forrest Gregg. What did he say to his Packers at halftime?
A lot of bleeps, that's what he said, I'm telling you. But Forrest, I know he went in, I know he got on everybody. He is the kind of man, he will never, as he told us yesterday, he will not knock anyone publicly. But you get behind those doors, and he's a man that I describe as being brutally honest. I remember a few times when I played for him, he was rather honest with me.
Perhaps too honest.
45 seconds left to go in the third period. Ted Brown. No way at all. Not Scott Studwell, that's number 55. Randy Scott coming up making the tackle for the Packers. San Francisco shutting out Cleveland 27-0. Miami coming back. They finally have the lead over Philadelphia 21-17. Here's that baseball game 9-7. Indianapolis over the Jets.
My Jets fighting for a wild card, as is New England. New England doing a job in Buffalo 24-10.
Clock running down. 7 seconds left to go in the third period. 2nd and 12. The whistle is blown. The Vikings didn't get the playoff in time as the third period runs out. 31-17. 2nd and 11. Ball at the 21 of the Vikings. at quarterback. The blitz is on, but it's picked up. Wilson with plenty of time. Throws across the middle. Incomplete, intended for Ted Brown. Mark Murphy covering for the Packers.
Pressure on Wade Wilson, obviously, but remember, the Vikings have come back twice in this game already. They trailed 10-3, and then they trailed 17-10. Right now, they are 2 touchdowns down. As you look at the quarterback comparison here, 2 touchdowns for Wade Wilson, 3 touchdowns for Lynn Dickey. Yardage, Dickey twice as much yardage as Wade Wilson. That's really the difference. The Packer passing game.
The Vikings would like to get their passing game in high gear here in the 4th quarter. 3rd and 11. Inside, a quick pop over to Ted Brown. Oh, a quick opener right up the middle, and Ted Brown running at full speed immediately. Picks up enough yardage for the first down. Tackle made by Tom Flynn.
Jim, that's only the 2nd time in 10 attempts that they've made a first down on 3rd down. And this was just a quick hitter, everyone expecting to pass. A good call. He breaks it up the middle for the first down. Quick trap up the middle, everyone dropping back, looking for that pass defense. Brown gets it.
And Brown's the perfect man to run that play in that particular situation because he is so quick. Ball at the 35-yard line of Minnesota. Wilson back to pass. Ball is incomplete. Intended for number 83, Steve Jordan. Pass a little low then, or actually it was real low then, and Jordan, who was leaning away from it, wasn't able to scoop it up off the ground.
The idea was right. It was just a delay to the tight end. And Les Steckel wants his quarterback, Wade Wilson, who hasn't played that much, to play within himself. He's designed a game plan that doesn't ask Wade Wilson to do all the things that Tommy Kramer might have done. Of course, Kramer is the heart and soul, the spark plug of the Minnesota Vikings. He has been for the 8 years that he's played after he took over from Fran Tarkenton.
Wilson told us yesterday he'd like to go downtown a little bit on this Packer secondary. So far this afternoon, he hasn't been that successful. He tries once again, but he is belted. Alfonso Carricker coming in. And that's one of the reasons why he hasn't been able to go deep on the Packer secondary.
Alfred Anderson, number 46, is blocking. Take a look at him. He's on Mad Dog. Douglas, number 52. Watch, number 53 from the outside. Watch him. Comes in. See, Anderson let him go now. He was hoping that Wilson would have got him the ball quickly. That's called blitz control. The back picks up the linebacker quickly, then lets go. Quarterback has to get him the ball now, or else he's pressured. Wilson didn't read it. Thus the incompletion.
Alfonso Carricker applying the pressure. Mike Douglas coming in, trying to finish it off. Here's Wilson again. Ball is thrown short, intended for Mike Jones. Estes Hood covering for Green Bay.
Difficult situation for the Vikings to be in because they don't have the kind of offense that they used to have when they had Joe Sensa, Ahmad Richard. They don't have the big play offense with the speed burners on the outside. You see these guys having trouble getting loose. And right there, number 38, Estes Hood, almost comes up with the interception. They just can't shake loose the way they used to be able to when the Vikings had all that speed.
So that makes it 4th and 10, John. Ball at the 35. Tom Flynn back to receive for Green Bay. Here's Greg Coleman. Flynn should be able to run it back. He does, up to about the 35-yard line. And the Packers have the ball at their own 35-yard line. Lynn Dickey at quarterback. Jesse Clark and Gary Ellis, the running backs. Handoff goes to Jesse Clark. Clark hit immediately by Charlie Johnson.
And Jim, I thought it was interesting talking to Forrest Gregg yesterday in his hotel room around the round table. He talked about his offense and his defensive teams. The offense, of course, sputtered early in the year. Everyone expected them to be so good. They average just 200 yards a game. Last 6 games, they've been over 400 yards a game. And Forrest Gregg said he made a mistake. And I want to talk about that a little more after this play.
That's part of the honesty of the man. You have to respect a man who will admit those mistakes. 2nd and 8. Here's Lynn Dickey. Picks up the corner blitz. Going deep, intended for Lofton. He's got it. James Lofton's going to score. Yards. Lynn Dickey to James Lofton. The man playing in his 100th consecutive game as a Green Bay Packer.
it's unfair to ask a defensive back like Rufus Best to cover James Lofton all over the field, man-to-man. Dickey got the protection. Rufus Best was by himself. Lofton hit the post, went back to the corner. It was over.
Now Del Greco. Extra point conversion is good. Oh, what a thing of beauty that was when you look at it from an offensive standpoint.
It is. Take a look at the protection. He gets it. Meanwhile, while he's getting it, Lofton is, see him go to the corner there? He turns Best all the way around. Lofton makes the catch, and then you tell me who in the NFL is going to catch James Lofton's 4.3 speed, takes it in for the touchdown, and says, okay, just another day at the office.
And one of the great things about it was his move to the post. He really had Rufus Best thinking he was going to the middle of the field.
And you think Dickey isn't happy and say, all right, yeah, how about that? You want a touchdown? Here it is.
Just another day at the office for James Lofton and Lynn Dickey. 13:07 left to go in the fourth period. Set to kick off now for the Packers. Darren Nelson back to receive for the Vikings. Nelson at the 11-yard line. Uses his speed. Darren Nelson, who's one of the best at returning punts and kickoffs, does a great job returning it deep into Green Bay territory.
And it has to be a credit to the character of this team. Watch Darren Nelson. Great speed, great quickness. Third year out of Stanford. Gets some good blocking and then shows, watch his quick move right there. He is a game breaker. That's the kind of play that the Minnesota Vikings have to get if they're going to have a chance in this game. And that's the kind of play that Stecco wants. He doesn't want his team to lay down just because they're trailing 38-17. He's looking for respectability and character building.
Pick up of 45 yards on the play. First and 10, ball at the 45. Wilson back to pass. Complete to Ted Brown. Brown there, tackled by Mike Douglas. You know, John, you were talking a couple of moments ago about Forrest Gregg and how honest he was with us yesterday.
Yeah, he looked at his team when he came here from Cincinnati. He said, look, I have the worst defense in the NFL, so I'm going to concentrate on that. I have a super fine offense. It was one of the tops in the NFL last year. But, you know, it was like the man walking into a new house. He walks through a beautiful garden. He says, well, I don't have to do anything with that. He goes inside. He sees the paint chipping the wallpaper out, so I concentrate on that. And that's what he did. He concentrated on the defense. He left the offensive alone. They sputtered. The defense got better. He said it was a mistake. But his offense is back today.
This is indeed have reason to cheer. Leading the Minnesota Vikings 38-17. The Vikings have the ball. Packer territory, 2nd and 6. Ball at the Green Bay 41. Wilson set to pass. Ball is complete to Leo Lewis. First contact made by Mike Douglas. And that is enough yardage for the first down, and immediately it's a hurry-up offense because the Vikings know they're too far behind. They can't take their time. They've got to move and move quick. Here comes the blitz.
Number 90.
The blitz was picked up in the front. However, Ezra Johnson came in and made the sack. That's one of the things about the blitz. That's Johnson's second sack of the afternoon. But the blitz was on. It allowed Johnson to get in and make the sack on Wade Wilson. Inside handoff to Ted Brown. Tackled by Terry Jones.
Ezra Johnson, you saw him there pushing Tim Irwin, number 76. He's the wrong man to push. Remember Irwin back in that second game of the season, that heavyweight bout with Lyle Alzado? Watch out.
He's got a bout right now against Johnson. He's holding him out this time. Here's the pass. It's complete to Mike Jones. Mike Jones standing up. He better go down. He's standing up like, and the defenders are bouncing off him like they're in a pinball machine. You know, so many people talk about, you know, it takes a lot out of your unit to run a 2-minute drill maybe this early in the third or the fourth quarter. But Stecco's team is in, you know, they're in great condition. He put them through a terrific training camp, so they may be able to do that. However, Jan Stenerud now comes in to attempt a field goal. Greg Coleman will be in to hold. The ball will be spotted at the 36-yard line, so make it an attempt of 46 yards. And he's just short. from 46 yards out. Jan Stenerud comes up short. Remember, we told us yesterday how, when you go outside, it changes all the conditions. Last week, he connected, replaces Lynn Dickey. Randy Wright. There's a handoff that goes to Gary Ellis. Gary Ellis gets away from a couple of tacklers, and here he goes. Gary Ellis finally fighting off Carl Lee.
And the Pack has control of this game. Ellis off left tackle. Take a look at the end zone behind the offensive shot. Watch Ellis go off the left side of your screen. A little cross action. And then shows a quick cut right here behind some blocking, breaks away, and then he just uses that straight arm on Carl Lee. Watch him here. It's like a boxer jabbing. Here, Larry Holmes, stay away from me. Bang, bing. I'm going to get some extra yardage. He does.
Pick up of 50 yards. First and 10. Ball at the 21-yard line of Minnesota. Hand off to Eddie Lee Ivory. Great balance by Eddie Lee. Kind of rabbit hopping on his left leg before he's tackled there by Robin Sinline.
And you're seeing both Eddie Lee Ivory and Gary Ellis doing the job.
Scores around the league. San Francisco shutting out Cleveland 34-0 in the fourth quarter. Pittsburgh over Cincinnati by 5 in the fourth period. Miami back on top of Philadelphia 24-17. New Orleans over Atlanta. Here's a handoff. This is Ellis again. Flags on the play as Gary Ellis is tackled by Robin Sinline. The Vikings are indicating the penalty is against the Packers. And referee Jerry Markwright indicates it is also for illegal procedure. So, John, we were talking about the Packers applying that knockout punch.
James Lofton, Lynn Dickey applied it. Lofton with that 63-yard touchdown. I think it has to go back to that conversation that Dickey and Bob Schnelker had about the offense. It sputtered so early. They weren't doing some of the things that they did last year. They were far less aggressive. They changed that attitude.
Number 65, offense, penalty decline, third down.
And the result is obvious here today.
Okay, a couple of other scores in the National Football League this afternoon. Houston leading Kansas City 14-9 in the fourth quarter. New England over Buffalo 31-10 in the fourth period. Washington on top of Detroit 28-14 in the fourth quarter. Don't forget the Rams and Bears coming up after our game. It's Randy Wright. Pass is thrown. Intended for Ron Cassidy. Ron Cassidy makes the reception. He's at the 5.5-yard line. So now some of these substitutes getting in and taking advantage of their opportunities.
Exactly right. Watch Cassidy on the sideline. Just lets his body collapse. His knees and his feet come inbounds right there. Excellent catch by Ron Cassidy, the fifth-year man out of Utah State.
Randy Wright at quarterback. 10 minutes and 7 seconds left to go in the ball game. The draw play to Ellis. He's going to get in there. Excellent job of blocking by the Packers offensive line.
An excellent job of running by Gary Ellis. He put a fake on number 45, Tommy Hannon, and left him grabbing air and grass and then took it in for the touchdown.
Here's Aldo Bricco. His legs got a pretty good workout this afternoon. Trying for the Packers' 45th point of the game. And it's good. So whatever Forrest Gregg had to say at halftime, and I have a pretty good idea of what he did, Man, they've come out and really gone to work in the second half.
They certainly have. This is individual effort. You mentioned good block. Watch this move right here. How are you? Tommy Hannon, no luck. I'm going to fake inside now and take it in myself. Ellis, touchdown.
Well, that offensive line that Forrest Gregg was telling us about yesterday, with the exception of a couple of times not being able to pick up a couple of blitzes, which really upset Coach Gregg. They have, I'm sure he feels very, very good about the way that they've come back in the second half, because this is the kind of football that Forrest Gregg wants. He's a physical coach. He wants his team to be physical, and he's kind of changed their thinking a little bit here in Green Bay. And, you know, it's really hard to argue with success.
And he's getting in tune with so many of the other teams in the NFL. The trend now to those huge offensive lines, much like the Raiders have had for years. He's got a line that averages over 270 pounds now, 6'5".
And you talk about a game that's coming up after this one. Oh, don't you go away. That's Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, the Rams, and the Chicago Bears. Stay tuned for that one. Bill Greco with a squib kick right down the middle of the field. Ball is returned to about the 34-yard line.
Curtis Rouse, all 6'3", 318 pounds of him, picking up that ball and returning your kickoff. How would you like to tackle Curtis Rouse at the kickoff?
No, I wouldn't like to. I wouldn't like to at all.
To say he was rolling along. Ooh, the big man.
He really does anchor that offensive line, doesn't he?
You know, Les Steckel talked about Rouse and Tausch, how he switched them a couple weeks ago, so that was a mistake. A lot of confusion. Boy, they made some switches on that offensive line. Riley and Irwin have been switched. Rouse and Tausch, the experiment didn't work. They're back at their original position.
9:55 left to go. We know we're just going to see nothing but air balls now. Ball is complete to Leo Lewis. Leo Lewis tackled by Randy Scott. So Wade Wilson is being down 45-17. Going to fill the air with passes. Going back to pass again, complete to Ted Brown. Estes Hood, number 38, the first to make contact for the Packers.
And you have to speculate as you watch Wade Wilson at quarterback. He won 2 games, one last year, one this year against Tampa Bay last week. Steckel said if he continues to win, he'll be my quarterback. But Tommy Kramer, though not perfectly healthy, is getting close to it. You'll have to wonder if Kramer will be back next week against Denver.
Well, that pass again is complete to Ted Brown.
Ted Brown for the first down.
And of course, all they're just trying to do now is get whatever they can. As you look at the concern, Les Steckel, whose team has really been blown out here in the second half.
No doubt about it. And also, when you look down the path past this game, it's Denver, Chicago, and Washington.
There's a fumble on the play, and Terry Jones makes the recovery for the Packers.
When it rains, it pours. Vikings having a terrible afternoon, but a lot of that has to do with the aggressiveness of the Packers.
When you are aggressive, you make your own big plays. And a tough day at the office for young Wade Wilson. So Randy Wright comes in now. He replaced Lynn Dickey. He has the ball at the 48-yard line of Minnesota. There's a handoff to Ray Krause. Ray Krause from the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, tackled by Dennis Johnson.
And you look at the Packers, you sense that they're building. Their defense is much improved. Their offense is what it was a year ago. Randy Wright, the rookie out of Wisconsin, drafted in the 6th round this year. You have to wonder if he is the heir apparent to the job. Of course, he's a local favorite, having gone to Wisconsin. That puts a little extra pressure on Forrest Gregg and the Packers.
And I would think a little pressure on Wright, too, to perform.
Definitely.
No pressure right now, 45-17. Well, under 8 minutes left to go in the ballgame. This is Bill Rogers. Charlie Johnson making the tackle along with Joey Browner. And also, Forrest Gregg was telling us that it has taken a little time, but now he feels that everyone on the Green Bay Packer roster is starting to come over to the program that he's wanted to establish. And it's taken a little time because, you know, anytime you try to establish something new, there's always going to be a little bit of resentment.
And look at this score here. It's close. Miami leads Philadelphia by 1. Philadelphia coming back against Miami after Miami was down against Philadelphia. Good game. Woo.
Eddie Lee Ivory didn't get the handoff. Randy Wright ends up with it. Wright tried to hand off to Eddie Lee Ivory, and you saw Eddie Lee take off a couple steps, turn around, and said, "Oh my goodness, where is it?" Scott Studwell in on the tackle. 6:59 left to go in the ball game. But don't forget, coming up right after our contest, the Los Angeles Rams going against the Chicago Bears. Walter Payton, Eric Dickerson, the top 2 rushers in the National Football League. The Bears leading the NFC Central Division, one of the toughest defenses in all of pro football.
You know, everyone talks about the running backs, but if you look at Chicago, they're #1 in the NFL in defense, #1 against the rush. Watch out, Dickerson.
Here's Del Rogers. The Vikings are going to watch out for him. He's tackled by Joey Browner. Picks up enough yardage for the first down.
Now you talk about that Chicago-LA Rams game coming up next. When you look at the Rams defense, Walter better watch out too. They're #3 in the NFL versus the rush. They give up under 100 yards a game on the ground. So those are 2 good defenses against 2 of the finest rushers in the game.
And of course, you know, the Rams playing, very well. They're led by Jack Youngblood, who's leading the team in sacks after 14 years in the league.
Well, what about Richard Dent for Chicago? Leads the NFC in sacks with 12.
Here's Eddie Lee Ivory again. Eddie Lee dancing his way, getting inside the 20-yard line.
You know what I have to ask you, Jim, and I know you spend a lot of time. You live in L.A., you work for KCBS out in L.A., you know the Rams. I'm amazed. Jack Kemp is the quarterback. Would you have believed that the Rams would be 5-2 under Kemp when Ferragamo went down?
I don't think there are too many people who would believe that when it happened, because Kemp is only in his 4th year out there with the Rams. But he's very, very smart, and that's one of the things that John Robinson likes about Jeff Kemp. He's very smart, and he calls him an efficient quarterback. That's one of the reasons why they've been so successful. Here's Del Rogers. As the Green Bay Packers have been somewhat successful, I guess you could say, in the second half here, as they've really poured it on. Scott Studwell and Doug Martin making a tackle for the Minnesota Vikings.
You know, you look at these 2 teams, and we talked about it earlier, them being in similar situation. New coaches, both 3-7, tough schedules, losing close games. What I sense as I look at them, that the Packers are on the road. They believe in Forrest Gregg. He has a direction, and his players, both offensive and defensively, believe in the program, and they're taking hold, whereas the Minnesota Vikings are sputtering. They've got some serious problems.
The handoff goes to Ray Krause. But of course, not too many problems for the Packers here in the second half.
Of course, there are reasons when you look at the Minnesota Vikings and Les Steckel. When you're a quarterback in the NFL is the single most important position, no matter what anyone says. When you lose a dominant, spark plug quarterback like a Tommy Kramer, your team has to suffer in every aspect. And that's what happened to Les Steckel, besides losing all his defensive linemen. I mean, Doug Martin has been hurt, Mulaney's been hurt, and that is the guts of a defense. It starts with the defensive line. On offense, it starts with the quarterback.
And also, you know, another factor that contributes to that is not having the kind of talent that you would like to have.
Sure, the depth of talent when you do get an injury.
And
Excuse me, this man isn't about to use as an excuse, because good teams find a way to win with injuries. But he's taken over a team that was struggling last year. They may have had a reasonable record under Bud Grant, but he's taken over a tough team. They're in 4th down now. Let's see if the Minnesota Vikings can dig in and stop the Packers. Show some character.
Yes, 3 minutes and 50 seconds left to go in the ball game. Randy Wright at quarterback for the Packers. They're all digging in. Quarterback sneak. There will be a timeout for a measurement. The Packers obviously signaling that it was a first down. Scott Studwell, of course, of the Vikings saying, no, you didn't make it. The final decision will be handed down by Jerry Markwright, who is our referee today. He calls timeout because he wants to measure and make sure himself.
No.
Yes.
My old team, no. Don't tell me this is wrong. It's got to be wrong. That baseball score can't be 9-5, but it is. Here's the measurement.
And the Vikings held. So Scott Studwell was correct.
And it may seem like a very minor point, and it means really nothing to Forrest Gregg, but it means something to Les Steckel and the Minnesota Vikings. They held on 4th down. They've shown some character, and it may be a crumb, but it's important when you're trailing by such a large score.
So 3 minutes and 42 seconds left to go in the ball game. Along with John Dockery, I'm Jim Hill. County Stadium in Milwaukee. 3:42 left to go in the ball game. 45-17, Green Bay over Minnesota. Inside handoff to Ted Brown. Brown gets over the 20-yard line before he's tackled by Mike Douglas. Here's the final. Miami defeating Philadelphia 24-23 in a real shootout.
11-0. Will Miami ever lose?
Douglas made the tackle.
Here's Wade Wilson. Throws downfield into and out of the hands of Dwight Collins. Oh, he tried to put his head into the turf after he missed that one. Tim Lewis defended. And in that game, John, Dan Marino, 20 of 34 for 246 yards, 1 interception, and 1 touchdown. That touchdown pass, 11 yards to Tony Nathan.
Not an awesome performance from Marino, but he seems to get it done. And, you know, people forget about Miami's defense. It's outstanding. Last week they were behind against the Jets. This week they're behind against Philadelphia. You have to look at Miami and say they are one of the elite in the NFL.
21-yard line of Minnesota.
Mark of an excellent football team when you can overcome adversity and come back when you know everyone's shooting at you. 3rd and 4. Ball at the 41-yard line. Good protection for Wilson. Pass is thrown. Complete to Dwight Collins. Dwight Collins. Caught from behind by John Anderson.
You talk about overcoming adversity. When you look at the Minnesota Vikings, they're down 45-17. They're still hustling. Wilson's still completing passes. They're moving the ball.
1st and 10. Ball at the 46-yard line of Green Bay. Wilson back to pass again. One-handed catch there by Ted Brown. Only picked up a couple of yards, but he gets out of bounds and stops the clock.
And you look at the Minnesota Vikings, you look at their fluctuations. Last week they had that last-second field goal by Stenerud. They beat Tampa Bay. They take a little lift from it. This can be devastating. They're losing so badly to the Green Bay Packers. Les Steckel trying to avoid those kinds of fluctuations.
Tonight on CBS, an all-new 60 Minutes, and Ellis Island, a miniseries, and it's a very good one. A lot of people looking forward to that.
Oh, it's got great reviews, and of course the late Richard Burton stars with Faye Dunaway. And that long-awaited miniseries on CBS, that tonight, should be a good one.
Charles Martin being helped off the field.
94, Charles Martin.
He's Alfonso Carricker's backup at the left defensive end spot. Once again, this is a dangerous period of the game, John, as you and I both well know. The outcome has already been established, 45-17 in favor of Green Bay. But now you know sometimes guys tend to be just a little bit cautious. And when you get cautious in professional football, that's when you get hurt. I'm not saying that Charles Martin was being cautious out on the field, but more times than not, you start to see a lot of injuries at the end of the game once there's a blowout like this.
Exactly true. As you look at Cincinnati upsetting Pittsburgh, tightens up that AFC Central race a little bit. Pittsburgh now 6-4, Cincinnati 4-7.
The pass complete to Leo Lewis. Estes Hood in on the tackle. So Sam Weiss gets a big victory there. Another final here.
No question.
None at all.
10-1 San Francisco now, and they are one of the elite.
Dwight Collins ducked the bullet. That's what he did then.
Neither of these teams in that elite yet. Packers have the potential in a year or two to get there. They fill a few holes, get maybe a big stud on the defensive line, maybe a power running back, as far as Greg talked about. And the Packers have the potential to be a balanced team. They have to do it quickly, though, because their quarterback, Lynn Dickey, has been around a long time, 14 years. Who knows how much longer he'll be around the NFL.
But with the improvement of their offensive line, that certainly makes him feel good about coming back. Here's a handoff to Ted Brown. Brown gets inside the 35-yard line, tackled by John Anderson.
And boy, the players talked about Forrest Gregg being contrary, ornery during that 7-game losing streak. Things that have been a little happier around the Packer locker room lately.
Estes Hood defending as the pass is intended there for Mike Jones. Estes pushes Jones. Estes, he thinks he should have had an interception. But you talk about going through that 7-game losing streak. Who wouldn't be ornery and upset and irritable and losing sleep at night? A 2-minute warning. So Tim Lewis comes up with his 5th interception of the year. Lateral fumble. Mike Douglas ends up with it.
This is when it's fun to play defense. You just sit back and go for the interception. Watch Lewis. Good leaping grab. You mentioned it. He leads the Packers with 5 interceptions. Here he was in the grasping control, wasn't he? Pitches. Does that pertain to defensive backs after an interception?
No, because defensive backs don't get a lot of opportunities. You just let them go as much as they can. 1:39 left to go in our ball game. Packers have the ball at their own 6-yard line. Randy Wright in the quarterback, replacing Lynn Dickey. You can hear the action out there. Ray Krause carrying the ball for Green Bay, tackled by Walker Lee Ashley. So the Vikings right now, they just as soon come right off the field because this thing has long been established.
And there's John Jefferson along the sidelines, 4 receptions for 77 yards. Still hasn't gotten that 100 yards, Jim, but you have to think an afternoon like this where they look to him more often might make him a little bit happier in Green Bay. Of course, he's talked about leaving Green Bay at the end of the season. He's non-committal, but you get the feeling talking to John Jefferson that this may be his last season with the Packers.
Well, there has been a lot of speculation. There was at one time at the middle of the season, just before the trading deadline, that maybe Jefferson would be traded to the Dallas Cowboys. That particular deal fell through. John is he's kind of quiet. He doesn't talk that much about what he's going to do in the future.
And he really wants a playoff team. He wants to do some things personally, but he also wants to be on a playoff team. Look at San Francisco winning big. Cincinnati nips Pittsburgh. Philadelphia lose to Miami.
Indianapolis over the Jets. Those are the only finals so far this afternoon. That's Ray Krause again, the ball carrier.
How about that game coming up next? What a good one that'll be. Chicago at the LA Rams. The second game of our doubleheader here on CBS.
That will be an excellent ball game. Eric Dickerson going against Walter Payton.
The best in the game.
For John Dockery, this is Jim Hill saying so long from Milwaukee County Stadium in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.